Good evening, this is Councilor Cruz, and I just need to change that momentarily. I just hid myself. Where did I go? Out of respect for public health and in response to the governor's declared state of emergency, this meeting will be closed to the public and interested parties can instead access the deliberations via a live stream. https://www.youtube.com/user/TheBrocktonChannels/live. That is on the city website also. This meeting is being held in accordance with Governor Charlie Baker's signed open meeting law order dated March 12, 2020, which relieves the public body from the requirement of section 20 of Chapter 30A that it conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, provided that the public body makes provisions to ensure public access to the deliberations of the public body for interested members of the public through adequate alternative means. For access to participate in the public hearings, the public may send an email to sresnick@cbglawfirm.com to obtain an invitation to the Zoom meeting. The public may also participate in the public hearings by commenting on the YouTube page for the Brockton Channels page, link above, and the comments will be read into the record during the public hearings. I also, this time I'm going to ask Attorney Resnick, will we be able to keep the comment period open after tonight for anybody who couldn't get the comments in?
You can, yeah, you can keep it open. I just won't be able to read it into the live meeting and into my minutes. But
anybody who wants to send notices, I can leave the hearing open.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I had intentions of moving item number 7 up forward, but then I thought it might not be fair to anybody who isn't here yet, and we'll let them come on later. So we'll stick with our agenda in the order that we have it. Item number 1, ordinance, be it ordained by the City Council. First, let me introduce that we have the entire body here. Councilor Rodrigues is here. Councilor Ian Erie is here. Councilor Thompson is here. And Councilor Monahan is getting into he texted me, he's having trouble getting in. He should be in shortly. Item number 1, ordinance, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Brockton as follows. It's section 2-127 of chapter 2 is hereby amended by adding the following division. Division 7, the Department of Human Resources. Invited to attend Sandra Knight, Director of Human Resources, Troy Clarkson, CFO, and a designee from the Solicitor's Office. Do you have a copy of the ordinance, Attorney Resnick?
I do. I'm just trying to make sure right now that I am unmuting participants in this item. Okay, I think everyone that needed to be unmuted, I've asked to unmute.
I see Troy and I see Sandra, and do we have somebody from the attorney's office? Oh, there's Megan. Okay, good. Thank you. And I apologize to the public and to all of us. This is not the way to run a meeting, but none of us are enjoying the COVID-19. And if this is the worst that we have to go through, we can get through this. A little bit of patience and a little bit of technology. And I apologize for my background. If I could figure out how my kids put it there, I'll take it down.
I don't know. I just want more power though.
Councilor Monahan is now with us, so we have a full board. Let me find the original order. Councilors, you'll recall, we actually passed this at an earlier meeting, and Councilor Fowle asked to send it back. There were some things he wanted put in that were from the original order. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Brockton as follows. By the way, can everybody hear me? Maybe
Yes.
a raise of the hand. Okay.
Yes, good.
Is hereby amended by adding the following: Division 7, Department of Human Resources, Section 2-379 established. It's hereby established Department of Human Resources, Section 2-380 Director. Do all of the members have a copy of this?
Yes,
Somewhere.
This basically, it's fairly long to read the entire ordinance. This basically took away the Personnel Department, which we have not been operating with for several years now, I believe. Ms. Knight, how long have you been in the position?
November 5th, 2018.
So over a year and a half, we've been operating without technically an HR department, but we have an HR director of a personnel department. And whoever's making all that noise, mute your phone, will you? I believe, Councilor Thompson, you have an amendment you wanted to offer on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wouldn't necessarily call it an amendment, so because I'm looking at the ordinance titled "An Ordinance Amending Article 5 Departments, Division 7, Department of Personnel." This was the ordinance that was disseminated by myself just a little while ago, but also by attorneys Bridges and Resnick, who worked on this ordinance. So just a little history. As you stated before, Mr. Chairman, this ordinance was passed by this committee back in February. When it made it to the full City Council, a motion was made by Council Member Farwell to refer it back to this ordinance committee for further review. Basically, working with Councilor Farwell, his problem with it was the full deletion of Section 2-381A, which was language developed by him and Councilor Monahan, and added to the previous ordinance regarding the personnel division. Since it was deleted in its entirety, he was not happy with that and asked us to review that. So working with Councilor Farwell, with Attorney Bridges and the Law Department, and with Attorney Resnick, City Council attorney, they put together some additional language that I think fills what the spirit of Section 231A was. And that was basically a reiteration that the City of Brockton would not discriminate for applicants that were applied for the position. So what Attorney Resnick and Bridges worked on was some language in a preamble to this ordinance, which basically spells out the City of Brockton's position on protecting all protected classes that come before the city who apply for a position with our city, that we would not discriminate based upon race, creed, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, and then physical or mental disability. Now, this is in, consistent with state and federal law. And so it just spells out that specifically in this ordinance. So attorneys Resnick and Bridges, whoever would like to answer, what differences are in this specific ordinance before us today that was different than the ordinance that was approved by this council or committee back in February? If one of you could speak to that.
Shannon, so your question, Counselor Thompson, is what is different from what's in front of us, or?
Well, so again, we passed the original ordinance out of this committee back in February. It was referred back and there was work done to it by both attorneys Resnick and Bridges. And so I just kind of wanted them to inform this committee kind of what the differences are in the ordinance before us today versus the ordinance that came out of committee back in February.
I believe what's in front of us today is exactly what was sent back, correct, Shannon?
Correct, but Counselor Thompson, I believe his intent is to submit for this committee's consideration amendments to the February submission. I can go through those one by one, and if Counselor Thompson wants to make those in the form of a motion, I have everything here that we can go through, but maybe Megan, since she worked a lot on this, she can add what she has worked on as an overview, and then I can go line by line to get the changes in by motion.
And sorry, Shannon, just for procedure, what would that motion, just motion to amend?
Motion to amend.
Yeah, motion to amend. And what I'll do, just because like typically what we would do is we would, if we were all sitting in the same chambers, we would write this down, but I can tell you what the change is and you can just say so moved, and then that will require a second.
Understood.
So Shannon, I guess, if you want to read this, is this
I
in
just want to see,
sections or?
is Megan?
Megan, do you have anything you want to add to that? Attorney Bridges, I'm sorry, it tends to be less formal when you're
Yes, I'm here.
looking at your computer screen.
Hello. I think, oh, it's taken. Thank you for having me. I think that Counselor Thompson captured most of the changes in the summary of how we got to where we are. Just, I guess, specifically, there was question about the deletion of section 2-381A. And so we worked together to try and save as much of it as possible. So essentially, the section starts out now with almost a preamble that lets the reader know that collective bargaining agreements might have implications that this section would not apply to. And it sort of also lets people know what the records retention schedule is and that we're going to apply state and federal law. So we couldn't write all of that down within here. But what we've done is taking Counselor Farwell and Counselor Thompson's concerns and made sure that job advertisements, unless the collective bargaining agreement says otherwise, are going to be posted publicly for at least 14 days. And that there is going to be best efforts used to obtain employment references and personal references, and promotions or appointments are going to be accompanied by written certification from a department head. So I think that those specific points hopefully satisfy some of the concerns. Other than that, there really wasn't any major changes. What was taken up by the ordinance committee in February is almost exactly what I assume Counselor Rodriguez's, Counselor Thompson's amendments will be. And then, let's see, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything here, but I think that's it.
So I guess we'll have to move forward and have you read those. Attorney Resnick.
Yeah, so I'll go through them one by one, section by section, if that's okay. So the first one actually would be to section, the title of section 2-378. It would be adding establishments and employment policy to the title of that section.
Motion to amend.
Second.
Any questions on that from the councilors on the committee?
No.
On that amendment then, Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan,
Yes.
Counselor Cruz is yes, so it's 5 in the affirmative on that. The next amendment,
Would be to continue in the sentence after, in section 2-378, after the first sentence, to add the following language. The city of Brockton maintains a sincere commitment to the principles of equal employment opportunity, affirmative action, and non-description in order to rectify past and present patterns of discrimination. This policy applies to every aspect of employment, including the recruitment, hiring, and terms and conditions of service of all full-time and part-time municipal employees. Employee decisions shall be made in accordance with state and federal law and without regard to race, creed, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, or physical/mental disability.
Make a motion to amend language as stated.
is there a second? Actually, I should have asked Ms. Knight, you comfortable with these and amendments?
I'm sorry.
Are you comfortable and agree with these amendments?
Oh, yes, I am. Yep, I spoke with Attorney Bridges and we were working collectively on this as well.
Okay, I'm gonna be, in the interest of time, I'm gonna keep moving forward. Just raise your hand if you have something you want to say.
Okay.
All right, motion made and seconded. Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan,
Yes.
and Counselor Cruz is a yes. That's 5-0. Attorney Resnick, you're keeping these, correct?
I have them all, yes.
Next
The
one.
next are changes to section 2-38. In the second sentence, after it says the director, insert a comma with the mayor's approval, comma, and then to just fix a Scribner's error where it says and assistant director, we're gonna drop the N so that it should just state an assistant director.
Do we need a motion on that, or can you correct that as a scrivener's error?
I can correct the Scribner's error, but this also does make a
Go ahead.
change that the director, with the approvals of the mayor, shall appoint those positions.
Motion to amend the stated correct additions.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan,
Yes.
and Counselor Cruz is a yes.
The next change is in section 2-38 duties, paragraph 2. After where it says state and federal, we're gonna delete that human resource language, so it would just state state and federal law. And then we would add the designations EEO prior to ADA and FMLA after civil rights. And then,
Instead of FLSA.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's finish the section.
I'm sorry, somebody, who was asking a question?
So, no, that was me, Mr. Chairman. So I guess we just go section by section. Is that the quickest way to do it, or after every point?
Well, each one is a separate amendment, so we'll have to do it that way.
Then I make a motion to amend as stated.
Second.
Motion made and properly seconded. Are any of the councilors against?
No.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can see that. Motion passes.
the next one is going to change, just so you know, this is kind of somewhat Scribner's, but the next we were going to be adding 2 additional sections. And so that just changes the numerical entries of the rest that appear. Items 1 through 9 will now be items 1 through 11. So it is to add the following 2 sections to that sections. Part 3, work with city's legal counsel and other relevant staff to coordinate city's response to all reports and/or complaints of discrimination. Part 4, serve as city's ADA coordinator.
Make a motion to amend as stated.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan,
Yes.
and Counselor Cruz is a yes. Motion carries.
Okay.
By the way, while we're waiting, I hope you notice I changed my background.
I
Yes.
like the other one better.
It's more fun. That's our council chamber behind me there. We haven't been in it for about 3
I
years,
actually
but
thought you were in the chambers, and I was wondering why the rest of us were in Zoom.
no, I just took a picture of my desk when I was picking up my books a couple weeks ago.
And there's Jim Harrington looking over your shoulder.
Yep. Attorney Resnick, what's the next one?
So the next one is just so we know that everyone's aware that the original does state that section 2-381A will be deleted in its entirety. So the language that I'm going to state next is the language that would be inserted as the new section 2-381A.
Okay.
So this is this language. Section I, subject to the provisions of applicable collective bargaining agreements, Massachusetts statewide records retention schedule, and the applicable state and federal law, the following shall apply to employment with the city. A, every vacant position shall be advertised on the city's website, in the news media and/or social media, and on such other job boards or websites as the Human Resources Director shall deem appropriate. The posting of an open position shall be for at least 14 calendar days. If a position is posted and remains vacant after 90 days, 90 and days, a new posting shall be made to attract an updated list of applicants. A record shall be kept of each posting and the dates and places when the postings appeared. B, the Human Resources Director shall use best efforts to obtain all relevant information from prior employment references and personal references prior to selection for employment with the city of Brockton. C, every appointment or promotion in the department shall be accompanied by written certification from the department head that the most qualified person was selected.
Make a motion to amend as stated.
Second.
Motion made and properly seconded. Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan,
Yeah.
and Counselor Cruz. The motion carries.
And so the rest of the ordinance is as was already submitted in the February submission.
Anybody have any questions?
No,
I'd
just,
entertain a motion. Go ahead.
just one quick comment. I just wanted to thank Attorneys Resnick and Attorney Bridges for their work on this matter. It's much appreciated, and working all together to make the best ordinance possible. And just good job, and thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion in favor recommendation back to the city council.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to recommend back to the full city council as amended. All those in favor? Well, let me do a roll call. Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan,
Yes.
and Counselor Cruz. The, as amended, the motion carries. Thank you. Item number 2. Ordinance, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Brockton as follows, that section 2-127 of chapter 2 is hereby amended by adding the following section. Section 2-127, pay plan relative to the Director of Human Resources. So what is before us was in City Council on February 24th, 2020. The councils, I don't know if you had it, but the comp grade is DH5, Director of Human Resources, minimum 112,500, step 2, 115,875, step 3, 119,331, step 4, 122,930, step 5, 126,620, step 6, step 5, 126,620, step 6, 130,420, step 7, 134,330. This was before us, and I believe we didn't act on it at the last,
Well,
we did, but different numbers.
yes, so, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Councilor Thompson.
So this was a matter that was again before us in February. At that time, this committee passed favorably, and I was the only dissenting vote there to pass the DH5 Director of Human Resources pay scale as just stated. I think at that time there was an agreement by all the members of this committee that, you know, the numbers that we chose really weren't based upon comps or any other information. It's kind of numbers that we just kind of pulled out of the air. And I just thought we could do better. In the meantime, between February and recently, I reached out to the law department to see if we could get some comps so that we could, you know, have numbers that are a little more justifiable than the ones presented. So I did get some comps, but I don't think there were really comps to Brockton. Now I know the law department did the best they could to, you know, try to research this issue. But the numbers that they gave me, I don't believe from the cities and towns that were referenced weren't really cities and towns of our size and our, you know, our basically our size. And so then again, we were referred to the Collins report. And so that's where I went to try to, you know, really try to figure out what would be appropriate pay scale here. And so since Attorney Bridges, you've made multiple references to the Collins report, the Collins Center report in our last meeting, I was hoping that you could help me understand a section that I read that may shed a little light on this this current ordinance before us. Now, Attorney Bridges, do you have the Collins report paper that was sent with this from the city clerk's office regarding?
Did we lose him?
There was a Collins Center report submitted along with it. Do you have that in front of you, Attorney Bridges?
No,
Okay.
I have the Collins Center report that I've been in possession of. I'm assuming it's the same one that was attached, but I don't receive the filing package that you all
You
get.
wish.
It would be the same. There has not been a different report.
Mine looks like this. This is the one that I sent out. Is it this?
What I think it's potentially a subsection of that. Can you look at page 2? Is there a section titled recommended implementation?
No, my page 2 begins with introduction and methodology.
Okay. All right. Well,
But let me keep looking, try and find what you're.
the-
I have a summary of findings and recommendations.
without trying to take up too much time in the committee's time, I do I value everybody's time. I would just make a quick motion. So again, Mr. Chairman,
Play my song.
one of the documents that was received in our package from the city clerk is titled as amended on the top. Shannon or Attorney Resnick, do you have that?
Ugh.
The Collins Center report?
No. It's
The
basically
amended
a
numbers.
document titled as amended in City Council February 2020.
All right, hold on, everyone. There's a lot of
Council
chatter in
Monahan,
the
can you
background.
mute? Thank you.
I have Council Thomas. I have the as amended version in front of me. Yes.
This one with a different pay scale than the one on the ordinance currently?
Correct. Yes.
That's what we passed at the last ordinance meeting, the as amended.
Oh, what's the one on the current ordinance before us? That was the one that passed, correct?
Well, technically, the
No.
as amended didn't get approved by the city council.
But
Right.
that's what we
They didn't-
passed
they
an
didn't-
ordinance and sent to,
No, so remember, we voted on two different ones.
no,
There
we only
was,
voted on one. Well, we only passed one.
we only passed one, we voted on two.
If you want to just make a motion with the numbers in order, I can fix it as a new amended from this ordinance meeting.
Then I'm gonna make a motion to amend the pay scale to read as follows. Minimum, 112,500. Step 2, 115,875. Step 3, 119,331. Step 4, 122,930. Step 5, 126,620. Step 6, 130,420. Step 7, 134,330.
Do I have a second?
Can you just take
Second.
1 second, Tim? Because that's what I
Mhm.
already have.
Yeah, that is what we have.
That was the as amended numbers.
Correct, but that's not what's in front of us. What's in front of us is the original offering. The as amended that we passed at the last meeting is not what was sent back.
Correct. So you just want to make a motion to, just so I know that I'm doing this right, you want to make a motion to adopt the previously.
Correct.
All right,
Correct.
I didn't want to miss anything.
I'm trying to adopt the one that was not adopted last time. I'm making another shot at it. So motion to amend the steps just stated. That's my
Councilor
motion.
Thomas, the one that you just made reflects the as amended version, I believe. Let me just pull up the minutes from last meeting.
How about this, Councilor Rodrigues?
Yes.
These are the numbers you propose, correct?
I'm not exactly sure because I'm having problems, finding my notes here from last time.
From February. I believe
Yeah.
these are.
Yes.
Because that's the one that I had proposed that you guys basically turned down, and then all of a sudden you propose a higher amount. So I would like to go back to at least what we had proposed, because I think you were under the impression that somehow there was going to be another proposal being made and stuff. So that's why you voted against it at the time.
Right.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, through you, please. This is Megan. Let
Okay,
me turn my
yeah,
video on.
thank you.
The October 2nd, 2018 letter that we all viewed on February 24th, the last time ordinance met,
Mhm.
outlined the comp grade for the DH5 HR director position. The minimum step was $112,500, and the maximum step was $134,330.
Yeah, I believe I actually, through the chair, I believe I proposed a lower number
I believe you did.
than this.
You did. I have those numbers available. You started with a minimum of 106,430,
Correct.
and that
What was-
failed
Yes.
vote 2-3. The
What was the
numbers that
high-
are,
Sorry,
The-
what was the high step there?
the high number on that first vote that failed
Correct.
was 131,316.
Can you read those into the record, and I will make the amendment of that? Like that-
All right,
that's
so
the-
you're gonna withdraw your motion for these numbers that you just read.
I apologize. I'm new to this. Yes, I withdraw my previous motion.
So Attorney Resnick, could you read us, so you
I'll
want
read,
you
I
want
can
to
read-
go with the numbers that Councilor Rodriguez looked at, recommended at the last meeting?
That's what I'm trying to do, yes.
So I can read
Attorney
those.
Resnick, if you would read those, and then we'll make an amendment.
okay. So it would be, the minimum would be 106,430. Step 2 was 112,450. Step 3 was $116,003. Step 4 was $119,664. Step 5 was $123,443. Step 6 was $127,316. And step 7 was $131,316.
I make a motion to amend as stated.
Second.
Okay, I have a second, motion made and properly seconded for those numbers. Any discussion, councilors? Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan. You can unmute, Counselor Monahan.
Oh,
He looks younger.
He's out searching for firecrackers.
Counselor, you may be. Counselor Monahan, are you there? Counselor Cruz is a yes. Well, that'll be 4-0 for now. We'll figure out his phone and get him in there. Took us so long to pass this. You're probably on step 7 by now anyways, Ms. Knight, so. Motion is made and seconded properly, it passes as amended. That was on the amendment. Now the question will come, can somebody make a motion to accept the order as amended?
I make a motion to accept the order as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the ordinance as amended. Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Counselor Ianieri,
Yes.
Counselor Monahan, you figured it out yet? Counselor Cruz is a yes. By the way, I want to take this moment, some of you may not be looking at the screen, but the mayor has been with us painfully so for all of the first 45 minutes. Thank you for being here, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
The ordinance is recommended favorably back to the full city council. Pardon me while I make a mess here. Item number 3, ordinance to amend the revised ordinances of the city, section 2-127 pay plan, be amended by adding compensation grades DAP-2. This classification carries 8 steps ranging from 63,887 to 95,467. However, it appears this was never, Attorney Resnick, this was never actually sent to us, correct?
yeah, I think that this was just an error in making it onto the agenda tonight. So my advice is to take no action on the matter.
I entertain a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're going to table number 3. Item number 4, ordinance, be it ordained by the city council, revised ordinances of the city, section 14, article 1, offenses, miscellaneous in general, be amended by inserting the following, section 14-18, face covering mandate. Invited to attend, Manuel Gomes, police chief or his designee, Linda Cahill, Dr. Cahill, interim director, Board of Health, Dr. Richard Herman, consultant, and the mayor is here, I believe, to speak on this. Dr. Cahill, maybe we can ask you first. I will say my belief is that hopefully we don't need to pass this as an ordinance, but if you could give us a little bit of how important these are and how successful the idea of the masks are.
So by wearing the face mask, we've definitely, our cases in Brockton are definitely decreasing. We seem to be going down. So we don't have to go out and buy a face mask, but as long as you wear a face covering, we're just going to have to continue watching the numbers over the next few weeks, months. So, Mayor, do you have anything else to say?
No, I just,
Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the committee. Thank you for what you're doing, and the new normal is Zoom, and it's a difficult task, so I applaud you. I I mean, I understand that the intent of what was submitted, but the governor's executive order made the masks mandated. So it's not my belief that we'd need it on the books of the city of Brockton as an ordinance. The best practices and healthy standards are what Dr. Cahill just said, and Dr. Herman has indicated as well. Wearing a mask, we know, prevents the spread of this deadly disease. So, I just want to let you know, and I'm sure you're aware, we've recently gotten wonderful donations of masks, 5,000 from Keolis, which is the MBTA, and another 4,000 from two groups in Boston, Cape Verdean Association in Boston, and the Korean Community Partners in Boston as well. So that's really what I wanted to say tonight, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And I know Chief Gomes couldn't make it tonight. I don't believe he's fairly busy trying to keep the firecrackers off the street, the fireworks right now, which has become our new scourge. I know Dr. Herman, Dr. Cahill is representing him also. I will say before I check with the other councilors, my belief is we don't need to make this an ordinance. The state already is law under the governor's orders. And I did talk weeks ago to the police chief about this, and he was of the belief that education is much more important. His people out writing tickets isn't going to make a difference. What I liken this to what Councilor Monahan and myself brought up maybe 10 or 11 weeks ago when everybody was dumping their rubber gloves on the street. And, just by pointing it out to everybody, it cleaned up. It's not perfect, but it cleaned up quite a bit. And education that you need those masks and how good a job they're doing is more important than criminalizing not wearing a mask. And our police have enough to do, and our Board of Health have enough to do than we're trying to learn how to de-escalate, not escalate things. And it seems like we don't need to. I'm glad President Azak filed this, but I don't think we need to make this an ordinance. Any of the other councilors have anything they want to say? Councilor Rodrigues.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I do agree with you. We've got some situations in our community where anything can actually become a flashpoint and result into some situations that we're not really very comfortable with. I also think that something that might have some sort of a sunset clause. We come with the vaccine within the next few months, and the whole thing with Corona disappears. So we're going to leave something in the books that are, intended to be an ongoing thing. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think we need to have a law in the books that actually forces people to wear a mask. I think education is a key thing. I think every time we have one of these meetings, both at the city council and city side of things, I think it's important for us to continue to reinforce the wearing of face covering. But I don't think at this time that we actually need to have a law in the book that says that.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson?
Yeah, I just concurred with what you were saying, Mr. Chairman, and also with Councilor Rodrigues. I go to the park often to go for a walk, and I just feel when we're outdoors, separated through distance, walking trails, walking DW, 90% of the people there are not wearing masks, and to potentially ticket them $300 for that when people are trying to get outside, trying to exercise, I just don't think it sends the right message. I agree that this does not need to be an ordinance. We have a health equity task force that is putting out educational materials. Most businesses require it when you come in. I think we're finding that the spread mostly happens indoors. And so I think the business community can regulate this on their own premises, and that, that the city of Brockton doesn't need to be in the business of forcing people to wear masks. So I concur. And I would make a motion to table if no other councilor has any comments.
Second. Motion made and seconded to table this item. Councilor Ianieri?
Yes.
Councilor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilor Rodrigues?
Yes.
Councilor Cruz, yes.
Hey,
Councilor
I'm back
Monahan.
here.
What's that? Oh, there he is. Councilor Monahan.
Yes, I have my hand
Thank
up.
you.
You didn't see it. It's okay. I got you. I think we should have an ordinance that you have a face covering all the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Come from the man who put his second grade picture up. Thank you. And Dr. Cahill, thank you for all you're doing. I know it's not easy.
You're welcome.
And thank you to the mayor for all you're doing too, although I don't know if people know who Joe Beluski is. He used to be in the comic books and he had a black cloud over his head and everything went wrong in his life. And ever since the mayor's become the mayor, it's just all downhill. Must
Can
be
only
your
get
fault.
better, Counselor. It can only get better.
That's exactly. Item number 5 with a public hearing scheduled. Item number 5, an ordinance amending chapter 27 of the revised ordinance of the city of Brockton concerning restaurants. Be it ordained by the city council of the city of Brockton as follows. Section 27-28, C1 zones, neighborhood commercial zones. Paragraph 3, special permitted uses is hereby amended. It was not in my packet, the actual, Shannon, do you have a copy of how it amends?
I didn't
Just
get
for
one.
all the councilors and the public, what the amendment is to allow outdoor dining. But just for the record, if you could read it, Attorney Resnick.
Want me to read the entire, it's not much. Want me to read the entirety?
Yes, please.
Okay, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Brockton as follows. Section 27-28, C1 zones, neighborhood, commercial zones, paragraph 3, special permitted uses is hereby amended by deleting the following. C, restaurants or coffee shops or takeout establishments, provided that the serving of food or beverages to patrons waiting in parked automobiles shall not be permitted. Section 27-28, C1 zones, neighborhood, commercial zones, paragraph 1, principal permitted uses is hereby amended by adding the following. O, eating and drinking establishments, including seasonal outdoor seating without drive-through service. Section 27-29, C2 zones, general commercial zones, paragraph 3, special permitted uses is hereby amended by deleting the following. F, taverns and restaurants, including drive-in type. Section 27-29, C2 zones, general commercial zones, paragraph 3, special permitted uses is hereby amended by inserting the following. F, eating and drinking establishments, including seasonal outdoor seating with drive-through service.
Thank you. And I think everybody knows what we're trying to do here. As the governor has said, we can dine outdoors, but in Brockton, we've never allowed that. So now I guess let me ask, well, first, I guess I'll ask Attorney Bridges or Attorney Resnick. All we're doing is allowing the zoning to change. Does it need will they need to go to the ZBA for a special permitted use?
I think it was already referred to planning.
No, I'm saying once we pass this, how does a restaurant get allowed to do this? Because I would assume the building department and the zoning board probably, Mr. Mayor, maybe you know, Mr. Mayor, if you could tell us, we're not approving, by us passing this, we're only changing the zoning ordinance.
Correct.
We're only changing the zoning ordinance. Restaurants will still need to acquire a common victualer's permit and potentially a liquor license from the Brockton Licensing Commission and through the ABCC.
Now, I assume anybody who has a liquor license to do this is going to have to go back to the License Commission because they're changing the footprint of where they're serving, correct?
Correct, sir. And we're doing that right now on a temporary basis under the governor's order. The mayor has issued an executive order that allows us to facilitate that while the governor's executive order is in process. But in October, let's say, if that is then rescinded, our ability to hold outdoor dining goes with it. And so we would like to make this permanent. I think this is one of those efforts that Mayor Sullivan has brought forward, working with Councilor Thompson, to really make our community a much more business-friendly community and create a level of ambiance that makes us a great city to live in.
Mr. Mayor.
Chairman, thank you. Members of the committee, I want to thank the Ward 2 Councilor, Councilor Monahan, and Ward 5 Councilor Thompson for sponsoring this. This is long overdue. And I want to make it clear, Brockton beat Governor Charlie Baker. We had this filed prior to his executive order. His executive order is temporary. It expires November 1st of 2020. If the city council adopts this, this will be permanent in the books, and it's long overdue. And you know, when I chaired the ordinance committee, I know many of us, and Council Cruz was on there, and Council Monahan and Moses and Council Rodrigues, we discussed it. It just hadn't, we didn't get to the point where we could push it over the goal line. Some people have asked, well, how could businesses operate on, say, Main Street? Well, I'll give you an example, such as the Italian kitchen. The tables would be on the back side of the Italian kitchen. So much like we're doing right now at Brack's and George's and IHOP, you know, you take all the safeguards. But it's really a mechanism that's necessary. It's going to help businesses get back after COVID, and it's really kind of piggybacking on what Governor Baker's allowing us to do right now. But it's a streamline, and again, we'll have to think outside the box, such as the businesses like the Cod. They could do it in the back as well. So again, it's going to give the ability for diners to have outdoor dining, restaurant owners to make some more money with their clientele, and waiters and waitresses to have more services. Thank you.
Councilor Rodriguez, did you have a question?
No. I just actually have a comment that it's long overdue, and I honestly believe that if we're going to be a city in the 21st century, I think we need to move along and do the things that some of these other communities have long been doing. I just have one concern, is that I think one of the things that I've been hearing though for some of these businesses, especially in the downtown area, to augment their business as we speak, that there's not a clear set of rules in the sense. I hear that, folks from some of the inspectional services are going down and enforcing certain things, demanding some other things from these area businesses. And it's creating some sort of a confusion within the business community. I mean, look, you tune in to CNN and some of these other cable channels, and you see in California, they're blocking off roads so that business can actually put tables and umbrellas on city streets. So I think it's important for us to kind of work with whatever we have with these businesses. If it means helping them put some sort of a barrier in a parking lot somewhere, then we do that. If it so means that we forego some of the building things that we do in order to make it work, at least during this corona phase that we're going to, we need to make it a little easier for some of these businesses to operate versus, I mean, I heard that, one of our inspectors came in and said that the renditions that people are submitting as far as a plan needs to be basically per scale. I mean, of a rendition that you're submitting. How are you going to submit a rendition of something that you're saying, look, I'm going to put a 12 by 12 space behind my place. I'm just throwing these numbers out as an example, behind my facility to operate this outdoor dining, but yet somehow you want somebody to come in and spend, hundreds and hundreds of dollars on some sort of a rendition that to me is a little over the top for what we're trying to do here. And yet when you do watch it on TV, you see these communities bending over backwards to do this for the folks in their business community. I think we need to be a little more flexible to do that as well.
Thank you, Councilor.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Ianieri.
if I might, I just want to chime in a little bit. And I have the same concerns that have been mentioned, even with what Councilor Rodrigues was saying. And I agree, it's long overdue. It's something we've never done. Of course, my concern is taking a look at, places in my area, especially the Campello area where there are small businesses. I find it hard, for them to really do something. And I'm not trying to throw the mayor off, but I can't picture the Italian kitchen doing fine dining outside in the back parking lot after the building's already been hit 3 times in the last year and a half in the front. I don't think that, wining and dining in the back on busy West Chestnut Street as they swerve around the corner is going to be something that I'd want to be sitting to watch in case something happens. So my concern is not only for them, but even some of the small areas in Campello. It's going to be very, very hard for those types of places to be able to do any of this at all. And we have some talented restaurants in that area, and have have them come over in the last couple of years. And Council Rodrigues knows what I'm referring to. A few of them, as well as some of the Cape Verde people who've opened up businesses there. So it makes it difficult. I mean, I'm fine with it, but I've got safety aspects of it. We're not Las Vegas, we're not California, we're not New York. But if some people are able to do it, I wish them the best of luck in doing it. And I just hope that the safety factors are there for them to operate. That's my biggest concern. I'll pass it, but I've got some reservations of it as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Monahan.
Yes, I think we should, obviously, this is a good idea. There's going to be a few bumps in the road, but we really do need this. The only question I would have, and I've had questions from restaurants in my ward, as to what's going to happen as far as entertainment. Are they going to have to go to the license to commission to get that, a license to have entertainment outside? Or are we just passing outdoor dining right now?
I believe Councilor Monahan, and maybe the attorney can correct me, or Mr. May can correct me. All we're doing is allowing it by zoning. I think any change to a license the license commission will have to be writing some guidelines and some laws on this. We don't set those as a council. We're just allowing that in the C1 zone where a special permitted use is, any restaurant, I believe, has to get a special permitted use. And we're just allowing it to happen. The rules and regulations are going to have to be set by the license commission, and I would assume the planning board will have physical dimension rules to set up. And I mean, certainly we're allowing the change, but music is a whole different thing in any neighborhood. So one of the problems Brockton has in so many issues is that our residential neighborhoods and our commercial zones overlap, and it becomes an issue. But we're not setting the rules and regulations. The license commission will be doing that.
All right. Well, if nobody else has anything to say, I'd like to make a favorable recommendation back to City Council.
Actually, before you do that, this is a public hearing is required on this because it is a zoning change. So I am going to open the public hearing and ask if there's any member of the public that's online that wants to speak in favor of this first.
Well, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I did not get a chance to speak, if I may.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. Two things. I just want to make clear that what this, an additional thing that this ordinance is allowing for is a by right of a restaurant without a drive-through in a C1 zone. So we're removing the requirement of a special permit in the C1 zone and allowing it by right with this ordinance. I think that's, that's going to be a big boost to any restaurateur who wants to open up a restaurant in the C1 zone and not require to have to go through the zoning board and the expense of the zoning board to open up that restaurant. So I just want to make that clear. From my understanding, this is allowing for non-drive-through restaurants by right in a C1 zone. I also want to piggyback on Councilor Moynihan's position regarding music and entertainment. Now, I understand right now we just kind of opened up the outdoor dining for Brockton. As you said, Mr. Chairman, a lot of these restaurants are in residential neighborhoods. But one of the attractions of being outside is to listen to music, or whether that be radio or live music. That's part of the ambiance of being outside. And I don't think this is going to be successful in Brockton if we're not able to develop some ability for there to be outdoor entertainment along with outdoor dining. We'll leave that to the licensing commission. We'll leave that to the planning board. But, I do think that's something that should be accompanying allowing the outdoor dining is outdoor entertainment as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public online who would like to speak in favor of this? Attorney Resnick will be able to see you if you are on the YouTube page, or if you are on the Zoom, you'll be able to. Mr. May.
Good evening, sir. I'm taking off my employee hat and putting on my Brockton resident, homeowner, taxpayer, and voter hat. And want to
Before you do
thank-
your address.
Oh, I'm gonna give 45 School Street. I wanted to thank the mayor and the two.
No, could you give us your name, because now you're in the public hearing part,
Oh,
your name and
Rob
your
May.
address.
I'm sorry, it's got my name on the screen. I didn't see that there. So Rob May, 61 Oak Street, with the flowers in the front yard, can't miss it. I wanted to thank the mayor, the two ward councilors, Thompson and Monahan, for supporting this. And I'm really glad to see this ordinance committee and hopefully all the council come behind this. We live in a beautiful city. We should be able to enjoy dining outdoors, especially in this COVID crisis. But in general, we should be able to enjoy good food, the great restaurants here in Brockton, and camaraderie outdoors. So thank you for considering this.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public wants to speak in favor of this? Shannon, nobody coming up?
The only one that has their hand up right now is Counselor Monahan.
I think that's an old hand raised.
All right, I'll lower his hand if he wants to raise it back up. And there are no comments on the YouTube page relative to this matter.
I'll declare that portion of the hearing closed. Is there anybody, a member of the public wants to speak in opposition to this? You can via the YouTube page, or if you're on the call, you can raise your hand at the bottom of the screen if you, or in your picture, you can too, if I see you.
Okay, so I'm just getting some chats on the side about what requests to speak on the matters. If you want to speak on the matter, there's a raise your hand feature on Zoom, but you can also unmute yourself right now, and I can keep you unmuted while you speak. So if there's anyone that needs to do that now, they can. So there's no comments on the YouTube page and no hands raised.
Okay. Declare that portion of the hearing closed also. And any other questions, any councilors?
Nope.
Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second,
Motion made and seconded to recommend favorably to the full city council. Councilor Ianieri,
yes.
Councilor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Councilor Monahan,
Yes.
and Councilor Cruz is a yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. It is recommended to the full city council. Okay. Now, I know we have many people on this next one that want to speak. What we'll do is have councilors speak, have the invited guests speak, make their presentation, and then we'll open it to a public hearing. So item number 6, ordinance, be it ordained by the city council of the city of Brockton as follows, that the city council amend chapter 27 of the revised ordinances of the city of Brockton to create a new zoning overlay district for certain parcels on North Pearl Street. Invited to attend, Robert Sullivan, Mayor, Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development, Attorney James Burke, and James Lambert from Wood Partners. Mr. May, do you want to start this off?
Good evening, councilors. With your permission, I would like to be able to share my screen for a very brief presentation.
Shannon, do you have to do that for him, or you should be able to?
He should be able to, because I didn't take over his access yet, so let me see.
And if you can lean in a little, Mr. May,
I'm sorry, one of the hosts needs to allow that.
Mike, can you allow that?
So good
And Mr.
evening,
May, can
Council.
you lean into your microphone pretty well? You're not coming off very loudly.
Is this better?
That's better.
Okay, good evening, councilors.
Maybe that's too close.
To discuss, oh geez, garlic. We're here to discuss the North Pearl Street Overlay District. We have been working on the potential redevelopment of the Braymore Nursing Home on North Pearl Street. And it is currently Zone C5, and we're having a hard time trying to attract developers to that. So if I could, we have proposed a new zoning overlay district that allows a more flexible use for an area that is so close to the highway. The purpose of the overlay district is fivefold. It's to provide opportunities for residential development with distinctive, attractive, livable environments. This is the really important to us that we create a balance and a mix of housing availability. Our goal is to promote the development of the North Pearl Street area. This property has sat vacant for over 3 years. It's also, we are creating this district to ensure that we have a high quality of site planning, architectural design. There are new guidelines that are required for the developer to satisfy. And we also want to generate positive tax revenue to the city. The current property that you see here is on North Pearl, just north of Pleasant Street, which is down here. I hope you can see my cursor, and just south of the cemetery. This area has a lot of commercial activity already. It's not a major commercial district, but there are some commercial districts, mostly medical office buildings, and a few vacant medical office buildings in this area. As you can see from this map, the district is zone C5, which is a office district. And across the street, there's a small building on the corner that is zone C1, but the rest of the district is zoned R1C, which is a single family residential district. I wanted to compare the existing zoning, which is the C5, to the proposed Pearl Street Overlay District. As you can see, the building height, while there's a difference in floor height or number of stories, the actual overall height difference is 5 feet. Lot area is, we require a larger lot to build under the zoning ordinance. We also have a greater lot frontage and improved setbacks of principal buildings. The current district has, and is the only district in Brockton that has a floor area ratio of, and that is 0.5, which means if you have a 1,000-foot lot, the largest building you would be able to build is 500 square feet. So it's half of the floor, half of the area of the lot is what your floor could be. Residential density is not applicable here because C5 does not allow residential uses. However, the Pearl Street Overlay District would allow them at a density of 1 unit per 1,000 square feet. And just as an example, downtown has a lot area density of 1 unit per 345 square feet of lot space. So you're allowed many more units per lot area in downtown than you are in this overlay district. And lastly, we want to talk about design guidelines. The current C5 does not have any sort of design guidelines, while the Pearl Street Overlay District would create very strict guidelines that the developer needs to follow. If we want to talk about uses that a C5 is allowed, again, it's an office district, so professional offices, banks, lending institutions, accountants, attorneys, hospitals, medical laboratories, professional pharmacies, and that's not a retail pharmacy, that's a pharmacy that prepares for deliveries. And then nursing homes and adult daycare are allowed. By right in the R5, in the C5 overlay district, the only use would be multifamily residential development. There are some special permitted uses that are allowed in the R5 district. This means you need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They include hotel with conference center, payphones, and tattoo parlors. In the overlay district, there would be no special permitted uses. And then, of course, we all know about the Dover Amendment uses. These are uses that the state says we, as a municipality, cannot prohibit in any way or form. And so any religious purpose, whether that was going to be a new synagogue or temple or mosque or church, we have no control over that. The same thing with educational uses. Education also includes everything from an elementary school all the way through alcohol and drug treatment centers, because those are considered educational uses. Also public service corporations. So if NSTAR needed to build a facility here, transformers or whatnot, that is an area that we don't have any control over. Same with childcare facility. Congregate living for disabled persons, and lastly, solar energy systems. So if somebody wanted to build a solar farm there, we have no control over that as a community. I did want to do a couple of comparisons, if you will. Under the C5 zoning, given the size of the lot, with a floor area ratio of 0.5, the largest building that you could build would be 118,000 square feet of office building. And under our zoning code, it would require 393 parking spaces. Under the overlay district, the units that are being proposed are 196, which is a total of 211,000 square feet, 212, let's say, with 299 or 300 parking spaces. So you can see the office use if there were office demand, and because of our location on the Route 24 corridor, there's very little office demand right now. And COVID has shown that most people are able to, or a lot of people who are working in offices can now work from home. And so there's a big question of what office use is going to look like in the future. But you can see there's a lot more cars coming and going to an office location. If they were to apply for a special permitted use, let's say it's a hotel with a event space. That's about 150 room hotel that you could fit on the site with 200 seats of event space with a liquor license, which would be permitted. And that would require about 250 parking spaces. But then you need to know that with hotels and event space, you have people coming and going at all hours of the day. You have less movement during the night in a residential development. But here you can see how they pencil out side by side. Now, the planning board had its public hearing last night and is still taking public comment, but there was a lot of concern about cut through traffic. It appears that people are coming up Rockland, and in order to get to the expressway, they're coming across, and then they're avoiding the traffic signal at North Pearl and Pleasant Street, and they're cutting through Carly, they're cutting through these side streets out onto Pearl. So effectively, they're missing the traffic signal. However, you're probably back into traffic, so you're not really, probably not saving time. But given the width of the roadways back here, 35 feet of pavement with no friction, I mean, meaning that there are no other cars parked on the street, You have 35 feet of pavement. That's practically a runway. So cars pick up a lot of speed and make an unsafe environment. And we concur with that concern. This slide, we're illustrating the traffic distribution that is coming from the site. Should we be able to amend the zoning and allow a development of this size come? You can see that about 55% of the traffic exits the site and heads north. Most of that heading towards Reynolds Highway and the interchange to get onto 24. About 45% of it does travel south, with about 30% of it moving on to Pleasant Street. That is basically following the current mode or distribution share that we have in the area. I don't know if we're going to see that much of an increase of people living here coming downtown, but it could happen, and it could be a concern, and it is a concern for the neighbors on that street. So what we're proposing to do is go back and work with the developer, and how do we, as a city, create some sort of traffic calming activity in this area, whether that is limiting access to streets, adding stop signs, doing speed tables, neck downs. There's a whole series of things that we can do in this area to make it less desirable for people to cut through. I think that we can solve those problems. And with that, I want to thank you and turn it over to the rest of the team.
Sorry about that, I'm muted. Also invited, we have Mr. Lambert from Woods Development. Well, Mr. Burke, did you want to speak first, or you have anything to add to the presentation? You want to tell us about the project itself?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll let Jim Lambert do it. Jim is a representative of Woods Partners, and they first approached me about the possibility of developing the Braemore. And as you're aware, 48 North Pearl is also included within this proposed development. I sat down with Jim and I did my own independent research. And the research clearly indicated that Wood Partners is one of the leading residential developers in the United States. They build high-end luxury homes. They build a product that Brockton could be very, very proud of. And of course, it intrigued me. We ended in further discussions and we're moving down the road towards the proposed development. My concern when I first got involved in this process, and I believe I talked with you, Mr. Chairman, was that there were some uses that were proposed toward the Braemore next door that were highly undesirable to the neighborhood. And one was a drug rehabilitation center, which caused great concern. It's the last thing you need in terms of property values. I've watched Wood Partners as they've developed in this process. I think they have been extremely open and professional. They immediately met with the representatives of the city of Brockton, its planner, the mayor, and some elected officials. They showed them their product, which is throughout Massachusetts and the United States. It's an extremely high-end and attractive product, and they deliver what they promise. Most importantly at all, for the community in the neighborhood, this is purely going to be a market rate housing. There will be no affordable housing associated with the project. I'm excited about the possibility, but I'm going to let Jim Lambert go ahead and give a further explanation of his company and what he promises to bring to the city.
Sure.
Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Rob for the presentation. Appreciate the time to present here tonight. Again, my name is Jim Lambert, Managing Director and Partner for Wood Partners. Jim actually, I think, did a very good job explaining who Wood Partners is, but let me add to that a little bit if I could. So again, Wood Partners is an integrated real estate company solely focused on the development of luxury rental housing throughout the United States and certainly here in Massachusetts. We have 18 offices around the country. We are one of the largest developers year in and year out of housing in the country. And that is really focused on rental housing. So that is what we do. It's what we do best. We're also vertically integrated. We're not only the developer in most cases, but we're also the general contractor and we're also the property management firm. So, and I think that's an important point to, for everybody to understand because we are involved from soup to nuts in our projects. We are involved from day one, obviously from finding land and bringing it through entitlement processes like these, but also constructing the project and then managing the project as we go forward. So we're here to stay. We're here to see through the project. We're very excited to be here in Brockton and be presenting this development to you folks. And so, you know, I'm happy to answer any further questions about who we are. But, you know, I think suffice it to say that this is a project that we are very capable of executing at a high level. Our intention here is to develop 196 unit rental housing, Class A, high-end market rate. Can't stress that enough. We've showed Mr. Mayor and some of the other counselors some examples of what we have built in Massachusetts. And I won't speak for anybody. I hope that they like what they saw. And our intention is to build a product here that is on par with what we build across the state and across the country. So, you know, I know this forum is not the right place to get into every detail of what we're proposing specifically. Happy to answer any question. We have our whole team here tonight, from our architect, our civil engineer, our traffic engineer, our landscape architect as well, and of course, legal counsel. So we can get into any detail of the project you want. The brief overview is, again, 196 units, 299 parking spots, and that's a mixture of surface parking spaces and individual garages that sort of ring the site on the left and the right-hand side of the site. Both to provide covered parking for folks who want it that live in the property, but also to provide some buffer from the neighborhood next door. It is going to be a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. We find demand for all types of units here in Massachusetts with the shortage of housing that we have. You know, we are renting today to young folks, millennials who are single, folks who are couples with no children. We're renting to people who are selling their homes and want to stay in their community in a nice, professionally managed property, and everything in between. So these are renters by choice. These are folks who want to rent as a lifestyle. They don't have to be there. They want to be there. And, you know, this is an institutional quality, professionally managed property that we're proposing here before you today. Fully amenitized, private on-site management, fitness, work from home space, lobbies, pool, outdoor amenities, grill, hardscape, and so on and so forth. Suffice it to say, in our opinion, it'll be the nicest development project built in residential project built in Brockton in recent history. We hope that it will be, and that's our full intention. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'm certainly open to any questions or working through any aspects of the project through our consultants and experts that you want to go through.
Hey, actually, before we do, my protocol slipped a little bit. I should have allowed the mayor first to speak, and I'd like to give him a few minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. You know, I live not too far away from this proposal. And when COVID happened, I took a tour of the Braemar Nursing Home because we needed to figure locations that we could use for isolation quarantine sites. I wouldn't let anybody go in there. It's in deplorable condition. So I will tell you this. I have friends, I have supporters that are on Nyland Road, on Carlin Road, and we hear you. Councilor Cruz came to my office just yesterday to talk to me. And Tim and I have been great friends for years, and we're both dedicated to our community. So I would be foolish as a mayor not to entertain any development in Brockton that could bring in a tax base. But I'll tell you, when myself and the chairman, Councilor Cruz, and Councilor Lodge Farwell, and the Council President Shirley Azak, along with Mr. May, went to East Walpole to look at the prototype, we were very, very impressed. But also, we were there to listen and learn. but we weren't shy. The initial schematic was to have the building much closer to North Pearl Street. We all said, absolutely not, absolutely not. It has to be pushed back. We also made it clear that a tie agreement wouldn't be, and Tim, the Ward 1 Councilor and Chairman made that clear as well. So again, if this does come to fruition and the overlay district does happen, we need to work with the developer, but more importantly, work with the residents that live in and around that area. Because right now, you know, when I go to 24 and I'm up at Hancock Park, I'm seeing people cutting down Island and Carlin all the road all the time. So I think there are mechanisms in place with the Traffic Commission that we could consider. But really, tonight's is to listen and learn from the constituents, the people we serve. But I just wanted to let you know that this is not a slam dunk by any imagination. This isn't a wink, wink, and a nod. This is a process that needs to be adhered to, and that's why it's before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors, do you have any particular questions you want to ask any of the invited guests before I open the public meeting and let the residents have their say and ask their questions? Councilors, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think you should just go ahead and let the public say what they need to say before we can
Okay.
question.
And just to piggyback on one thing the mayor said, the two biggest points we made were no tax breaks, but more than anything, no subsidized housing. And there's been no discussion or no backtracking on that part by us or by the developer. They've agreed that will be in writing. That will be part of the planning process, that there will be no subsidized housing. So at this point, Shannon, correct me if we all understand this is not a perfect process. This is unfortunately the process the Attorney General has told us to use. So I think first we'll allow, Shannon, what's the best, to allow the people who are on the Zoom meeting to speak, or should we take
So
these?
we can start with anyone who's there in favor.
Okay, that
of
should
the
be a short,
position.
that's going to be a short phone call. So
And then when we get to anyone who's in opposition, what I will do is if everyone can raise their hand, I will unmute you in your order. After you finish speaking, I will mute you. If you're not able to figure out the mute issue, you can start a chat and put your comment into the chat. You can also go onto the YouTube page and I will read that. I am keeping a track separately of everyone who has attended and everyone who will speak. So I'll know after we go through everyone if there's anyone's missing, and I can try and find their name in the gallery view to make sure that they have the opportunity to speak on the item.
Okay, so first I'll open the public hearing and say if there's anybody that wants to speak in favor of this, please raise your hand. When we say raise your hand, there's a button on the bottom of the grid, or you can, if you're visible, you can raise your hand visibly and I'll let you speak. But anybody on the YouTube page either in favor?
There is no one here requesting to speak in favor.
Okay. And usually, just so the public knows, usually it's very strict about that. Once one side is closed, because of the difficulty we have, we'll certainly be making sure that everybody gets their opportunity. So I'll do that portion of the hearing I'm going to close, and now I'll open up for those who want to speak in favor or have questions. So why don't we start with anybody that raises their hands? Attorney Resnick, you want to start them?
Yes.
Okay, what we'll need is your name and address for the record. So if you can state it clearly and slowly so that Attorney Resnick can write it. I see
Okay.
Galaxy S10e. Can you see that one, Attorney Resnick?
Yeah, so he's been unmuted, so we can start there.
Hello.
If you can give me name and address and then your comments.
Okay, my name is Stephen Morris. I live at 16 Island Road with my wife. We've lived here for 39 years. I wrote a little thing up and I sent it to Rob May and to Councilor Cruz. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read that. It's not long. The condition for the past 40 plus years was a nursing and rehab facility with minimal employee and visitor parking at 38 North Pearl. An attorney's office, 2 or 3 cars per day at 48 North Pearl, Bob O'Brien's place there. The only disruption was the occasional ambulance to the nursing home. It was loud, but it was only occasionally. These locations are 200 yards from my front door. And as the crow flies, about 60 yards from my front door. My wife and I, as I said, lived here for 39 years. Our neighborhood preference would be a similar facility to Braemore and a professional office like the existing attorney's office, or maybe an over 55 community of renters with live-in management. I used as an example, Queeson on the Pond in Easton. Townhouses or condominiums where ownership creates the vested interest that every single person that lives on what I call an island here, and I'll describe you. Every one of us is a resident that owns in this little island. The island I'm referring to is the one that runs from the corner of Carolyn Road and Pleasant Street down to Pearl Street, and then from Healy Terrace out to Pearl Street. Right now, the proposal for the market-based rental and 300 parking spaces, this would double the population and more than double the motor vehicle usage in this island, because their access onto North Pearl Street is the same access as I have from Allendale, you know, which is 70 yards from my front door, you know. It would double the population and double the motor vehicles. I guess to equivocate, we might envision dropping another home right next door to every existing house. That's for residential, you know, people. On Nyland Road, we get the traffic avoidance of the Pearl and Pleasant traffic light, which results in a right turn directly opposite the entrance to 38 North Pearl Street on Allendale. Carolyn Road to Healy Terrace is a racetrack in the morning, and the reverse in the evening is even worse as an avoidance of the Pearl and Pleasant Street lights. This will increase exponentially with the entrance and exit of vehicles to the proposed facility. Now, where this is that kind of a facility where they're all going to be upscale, so they're professionals, probably 2 cars per unit, and all probably trying to, or at least 90% of them probably trying to access 24 to head toward either Providence or Boston, you know, mostly Boston, I would guess. I wanted to say market rate housing is an interesting phrase that I have a few questions about. Is there an assigned minimum dollar value to 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments? Will there be city, state, or federal subsidy of any kind associated with the rentals? Will occupancy dictate a lowering of rate or trigger any of the above mentioned subsidies? You know, it scares me. Once the builders get their money and the initial boom of renting is completed, what guarantees of maintaining standards are in place and for how long? Big. Should this all happen, we're going to need a tremendous amount of study and action to mitigate the speed and avoidance that could overwhelm our happy neighborhood. I really also would like to add that I appreciate that Wood Partners wants to invest in Brockton, because I love this city and I've lived here for almost 40 years. You know, and my wife's lived here her entire life, which is over 60 years. And I was just thinking that, you know, just a little further down the street, like opposite Good Samaritan, is a nice piece of land that this would fit very nicely in because of the access to 24, which I believe that upscale people would like. And there is property there, but it would be the other side of Melrose Cemetery, probably the other side of the Fire Museum and the other building there. And honestly, it wouldn't affect the neighborhood at all, where this one will greatly affect the neighborhood. And I thank you very much. And I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being an advocate for Nyland Road. Thank you very much.
Thank
Steve,
you.
can I just ask you to spell your last name for me?
Morris, Morris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another one. I'm going to unmute Paul.
Can you hear me, Sharon? Shannon?
Yes, go ahead, Paul, if you could state your name and address.
Sure. My name is Paul Ware, W-A-R-E, 161 Healy Terrace. And I live here with my life partner, Susan Westhaver. I spoke last night and I've written a number of emails to Rob May and the planning board, as well as I think everyone on the city council as well, in some fashion. But I'd just like to summarize some of the things that were described, that were talked about last night in great detail. and this might be repetitive for some people who were there like Rob, but maybe new for the members of the ordinance committee and the city council and the mayor. The past few weeks, once I got involved with this through a contact with Chris Minshall, who I think is going to be speaking too, I have spoken to over half of the residents of Healy Terrace and Carlin Road, and also several residents on Bauer Avenue and Cashman Road. And basically, universally, everyone I've talked with is opposed to the zoning, both the zoning overlay and the apartment project that's proposed by Wood. And there are lots of reasons for this from different viewpoints. You just heard from Stephen about his viewpoint up in the Nyland Road and Allendale Avenue area. My viewpoint is at the opposite end of Healy Terrace. And Stephen mentioned that one of the major things is the racetrack that Carlin Road and Healy Terrace are right now, both in the morning and in the evening, but also sometimes throughout the day. And so that's one of the major issues that I bring to the table. There are also, and I'll talk about, if I have some time, I'll talk about that a little bit more detail in a second, but there are some other reasons too. And I think Stephen touched on some of these. One of the reasons that we oppose it is we don't really feel the need or see the need or have seen the rationale for the need for such an apartment building in this area. It's going to be a very, as Stephen said, it's going to double the population. It's going to be a very dense area. I'm not sure if really 300 parking spaces are going to be enough. So the parking may be an issue on North Pearl Street and maybe even some of the side streets if there's not enough parking, or if visitors are coming to the apartment building and don't have enough spaces to park in. There's going to be obviously some congestion at the North Pearl Street, Pleasant Street interchange, intersection rather, as well as the driveways that go in and out of the apartment complex. And some of that was taken into account in the traffic impact assessment that I read the comments, and I read the response to the beta group feedback on that. And there was a lot of emphasis on the driveways and how people are going to get in and out of the apartment building, but there was no information at all gathered about the use of Carlin Road and Healy Terrace as a bypass to that intersection right now. So I'm not sure that the traffic impact assessment took into account the traffic that was going on Carlin and Healy at the time they did the assessment, and was not going on Pearl Street and Pleasant Street, not going through the intersection. And they may have undercounted the amount of traffic that they had to deal with. Add to that, if this apartment complex is built and more traffic comes out onto Pearl and the Pleasant Street intersection, more traffic is going to be bypassing that intersection and going on Carlin and Healy Terrace, primarily to get around it, but also on some of the other side streets on the east side of North Pearl, Nyland and Allendale and Bauer and Cashman. So I have this inherent feeling that the traffic impact assessment was just not done in an adequate manner, and I think it's flawed. It undercounts traffic, and it does not take into account extra traffic that's going to not go through the intersection. So that's my primary, I guess, objection. And I think that that's probably just one other minor question, maybe not minor question, but I heard that there's going to be no affordable housing or low income housing. And that there's going to be some sort of an agreement or signed agreement to that effect, even though my understanding is under Chapter 40V that up to 20% of the housing could be potentially affordable housing if the market rate housing doesn't sell out. So I'm not sure how that's going to be handled, but I think at least initially, it's a misstatement to say that no affordable housing would be there, because it could potentially be there. And with that, I'll turn it over to some other people to talk. Thank you for your time. Hope you consider my comments, and I'll be submitting them in writing also.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Attorney Resnick, who do you have next?
I'm just going order with the way the hand raises are coming through. So Chris will be unmuted right now.
Hi, my name is Chris Minshall. It's Minshall, 31 Nyland Road. And I would like to apologize to Rob May and Jim Lambert. This is going to be very repetitive for you. This is pretty much what I said last night, but I feel it's something the city councilors should hear. Let me start by saying that I had my appraisal business in this city for over 20 years. And if my best friend and business partner had not contracted multiple sclerosis, which prompted us to close, it would still be in this city. And because my business was here, I chose to move here from Stoughton to further support the city back in 1999. I met my husband in this city. We got married in our backyard. So we obviously care deeply about this city and our neighborhood. We love our house and we've stayed here because it's in Brockton Heights, and Brockton Heights does not have any high density zoning. And even with the amount of time that we've been here, we feel in a lot of times that we're just the newbies in the neighborhood. We have so many neighbors like the ACFs, the Fentons, the Credens, the DiMarzios, and the D'Ambroses, and many more who've been here for 40 or more years. And every one of them that I've talked to are opposed to having high density apartments in this location. And we don't want to feel that we're being pushed out of our neighborhood because the planned zoning overlay will change the demographics, the density, and the overall feel of Brockton Heights. We all purchased in this part of Brockton because it was Brockton Heights. We feel that rental properties, there's not the same sense of ownership because the tenants are transient and they don't care about the neighborhood in the same manner as owners do. If this was something that was ownership, maybe we would feel a little different, but we feel it's going to change the entire neighborhood. We would prefer that the property be utilized for something under the current C5 zoning. Commercial properties may have more people all day long, but they leave at the end of the day, and there are not additional people in our neighborhood at night. We also feel that this is being done much too quickly during this coronavirus pandemic. Many of the residents of this neighborhood are seniors, and they're not comfortable with Zoom meetings. They're not comfortable with computers. They can't navigate the numerous steps it takes for them to find these things on the city's website. And they're calling me and stopping me when I go for a walk. They're horrified about what's going on without them being able to be at the meeting to voice their displeasure. I get notes left in my mailbox asking me, please let people know this, or please let them know that. And, getting access to just tonight's meeting required that everything be done within 48 hours because it was posted at the last allowable time per the open meeting laws, and then required an email to an attorney to be granted an invitation. This is clearly just not easy for everyone. And, we understand we're in a pandemic, but we have a lot of residents in this neighborhood who are seniors. We feel, and they feel, that the communication to the residents has been unacceptable from the get-go, and that the entire project has a feeling of being pushed through. I have to say, my calls and emails to the mayor's office and to the ward councilor were never returned, none of them. Rob May has been the only person who has been in contact with many of us in the neighborhood, and he has been great. I agree that with what Paul Ware is saying about the traffic study. The traffic study stated that only 5 cars came out of the Allendale North Pearl intersection in the morning time slot, which is inconceivable to those of us that live here. We have so many cars that cut through these streets. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I know that's everybody's concern is this traffic, but Allendale is not the street that most of us in this neighborhood go out because it's very difficult to get out and cross. A lot of us go out Nyland Road, take a right, and then take a right at the light. The other thing is the time slot that they used. Most blue collar workers and most of us who travel to Boston for work leave in the 6 to 7 a.m. hour. So everybody on my street that's not retired is gone by 7 a.m. when this time slot was studied. So in our opinion, despite what this traffic study states, it's kind of obvious to anyone that it's only going to increase the issues we already have if you add 100 to 96 apartments across the street. I also understand that the overall attendance at Brockton schools is down, according to Rob May. But what about the Hancock School specifically? I have neighbors with children who have brought to my attention that they feel the Hancock School already appeals to be filled to capacity. So what kind of burden to the city will this add, and what has been planned? I also understand that Mr. Cruz just stated that there are no tax breaks being given, but we were told that this could be going under a 40V development, and a 40V development requires that the city give them exemptions. So that's a tax break. And I know they had to do studies in order to do a 40V. I'm not sure how those studies derived that Brockton needs this type of development, as there are numerous available unrented apartments at Hamilton Oaks, at Westside Colonial, at Belmont West, and as of September 1st, there'll be 44 units available at the new 47 West Elm project. And these are just an example of the larger complexes on the west side. There are several dozen available apartments listed just as of this week in MLS. So I do not see where there's a need for an additional 196 units. More importantly, should any of these studies that were done for this 40V be considered valid now, since we are currently in a pandemic and we're entering what could be, who knows what kind of economic issue. So that whole thing is a whole separate subject. In conclusion, I and every other neighbor that I've talked to feels that there are far too many negatives to change the zoning overlay in order to accommodate this or any other residential project of this size. And I have to say, I am extremely disappointed that after all of the years of living here and defending my moving to Brockton to the people who say that the city is run by an old boys network of privileged white men that make all the decisions during a round of golf at Thorny Lee, I feel it was all in vain, because this whole thing feels like we're right back where it was when I first moved here, and that this is already a done deal and that it's being rushed through to accommodate the seller and the developer.
Thank you, Chris. Attorney Resnick, who do you have next?
Tim will be unmuted. Okay, Tim.
I am
think it's
here.
unmuted. Okay.
So yeah, Tim Almeida and 31 Nyland Road. That was my wonderful wife that just got done speaking. So what I'd like to say is I'm sure all the intentions and promises of this project are sincere. And my wife and I actually visited the Walpole site, which is very nice. However, that site's situated on 14 acres, not the 5, which is proposed here. I also believe that Walpole is a much different demographic target than the potential Brockton residents who may move in here if the market value is not the market value that you desire is not realized. I believe it will most certainly attract the affordable housing demographic that's here in Brockton. So how can you promise that there will be no subsidized housing at all in this project? And that is my question and statement, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll do some of these questions later on after we finish the public comments. Attorney Resnick, who do we have next?
I think it says Andrade, resident of Brockton.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mona Lisa Andrade. I'm a resident of 40 Allendale Ave. I'm also speaking on behalf of my parents who don't speak much English, but I would like to start off by saying that I was born and raised in Brockton, and I grew up on North Montello Street. So when my parents came to this country, they decided to build a future for their children. So leaving a busy neighborhood like North Montello to go live at 40 Allendale was a dream of theirs. And I also feel as though my mom worked at Brandmore Nursing Home. So that just goes to show how well connected this neighborhood is to us. I think growing up there, it was such a quiet neighborhood, not to say that it's not now, but the traffic has definitely increased. I'm a federal law enforcement officer, and I've had talks with state police officers who sit outside because what happens is that they can't control drug deals that are happening on the street. We've had a lot of more break-ins. So just to think about things that have already changed, imagine what's going to happen if you go and build 199 residential unit. We have cops that live around that area. And I think when to mimic what Chris said, if we as a community and as residents decided to move there for a reason, and most of the reason was for the residents, the neighborhood, and obviously to get away from such a busy area like North Montello. That's what it needs to be. And I think what's going to happen is, like everyone has said, it's just going to cause too much traffic. I have a 20-month-old who can't barely play now in the street because the traffic has just gotten so much worse. I can see Bramore outside my house just looking down the street. So it's just already causing issues, never mind if this unit is built there. So on behalf of my parents who have been here for 25 years, we are opposed to it. And as a longtime resident of Brockton, I appreciate, the economic development, but I do not think this is the right way to go about it.
Thank you. Do you mind just spelling your name and your address one more time, just so I can get it for our minutes?
Mona Lisa, Mona, capital Lisa.
Yeah.
Andrade, Andrade.
And the address one more time?
40 Allendale.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the next would be Susan, being unmuted right now.
Good evening. My name is Susan Purpura, P as in Peter, U-R, another P-U-R-A. I live at 114 Cashman Road. I agree with everything that's been said, so I'm not going to get into too much more with traffic, except to say that many times when I walk my dog down Carlin and Healy, I have to yell at cars going by because they're going so fast. But beyond the traffic concerns, I think about having basically 200 units in such a small area. And, you're talking that's minimum of 200 people because there are going to be some 2- and 3-bedroom units. So just people living there is going to be a large amount of people. Now, on top of that, people are going to have visitors. And given the amenities that are proposed, with a swimming pool, tennis courts, fire pits, cookout grills, you're going to have, especially in summer, you're going to have a massive amount of people there. And a couple of concerns with that are, where is the excess parking? Where are these people going to park when everything is full? They're going to go across the street to Allendale and Nyland and Bauer. They're going to park in our side streets. But another big concern of mine is, with the amenities, you've got the visitors coming in. I mean, not only do the renters not have ownership and they don't have pride of ownership, they may have pride of the rental unit. I'm not saying that they wouldn't, but visitors don't care. I know that from my own experience that, I love my neighbors, but people coming to visit them don't care. They don't care if they trash, throw trash around. They don't care how they park, etc. And my concern is, you're going to have a fire pit and grills and all that. You're bound to have some, shall I say, nefarious activity, and you've got a cemetery next door. So, I think you're going to have activity in the cemetery that is unwanted. And, nobody wants to see desecration in the cemetery, and just the volume of people that you're talking in such a small area is just overwhelming to me. It's already a busy area. I mean, I could never take a left out of Cashman Road if I want to. Now it's tough, but with the amount of traffic you're talking, it will be impossible. So that's going to make me go down Carlin Road and take a right onto Pleasant if I just want to get down to the light. So, it's rearranging our habits and our usage of the roads as well. So again, the traffic is a concern, like everybody else, but I am worried about such a large amount of people in one small area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susan. Attorney Resnick?
There's no one right now using the hand feature.
All right, while you're checking the feed, there are some questions that have been coming up in chat. Well, actually, why don't we wait till we're finished so I can have Mr. Lambert answer some of these? And Mr.
Yeah,
May.
and before he answers, I'll read the chats. Some of them do qualify as comments on the issue, but if people do put in the chat, just please make sure you put your name and your address. Okay, so Carrie, do you want to speak on the issue because you just unmuted yourself?
Hi, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to mention, so I have 2 school-aged children here on Nyland Road. I'm at 9 Nyland. And I have to walk them to school because we don't have buses because of our proximity to Hancock. And honestly, it's like Frogger out there. We have a crossing guard and people at the light don't even acknowledge him. Never mind if I'm just walking my kids to the park. So I find this unit to be a big problem for that. I know everyone has mentioned the traffic being an issue, but that's my main concern is all these kids that live near here have to walk to school. They have no other choice. It's not safe to cross Pearl as a child or, I mean, as an adult either. And then my other just concern is why isn't the facility being considered as high quality senior care facility? I mean, I feel like the pandemic has shown us how important quality senior care is for a community. And, you know, we've just let Braemore go into the ground instead of thinking of replacing it with something for our seniors. That seems much better than an apartment. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have, I think it's Josie Butler has raised her hand, so I'll unmute her.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Josie, and I am participating in tonight's meeting from 169 Terrace. My husband and I are 3 years into owning our property here and residing in Brockton. We are Boston natives. And growing up in the city of Boston, we've seen lots and lots of apartment complexes and developments the size of the one proposed and larger develop all throughout. I born and raised Rosendale. My husband raised Dorchester, Mattapan, working in Back Bay and South End. I've seen it all and heard it all for these high-end apartments that end up having affordable units. So I'm a little skeptical about that, the 40B option and whether or not this will truly be market rent. But I am all for, you know, renters. I started out as one myself, but what I want to say is that we made a decision to leave Milton 3 years ago and buy on Healy Terrace, simply because of the beauty and the quiet, the beauty of the homes on Healy Terrace all the way out through Carolyn and the side streets, and really that it was a quiet neighborhood. With that, I have noticed over the course of the time being here, we travel 24 to go to work into Boston. We know that when there's an accident from either 123 or 27, they will actually get off at 123 and travel up North Pearl to then maybe cut through Stoughton and Randolph, or they get off at 27. And, you know, we've seen that highway traffic, but also just the congestion of how we pour out at the Fire Museum and then the shopping centers. The corner here at the museum, I have watched and have lost count how many of the traffic signs have been hit and knocked down on the corner here. I would spot every morning leaving my house at 6:30, 7 a.m. a brand new sign, and then let Friday, Saturday, by Sunday, I'd be like, somebody hit it. And I know you all know this, but it was just an observation. Being new here in Brockton, these things are very new to us, but the decision we made to move to Brockton and also defend Brockton and the reputation that supersedes it, and this side, this Brockton Heights area, and this west side, if that's technically what it is, to people who have said, why did you guys move there? And now with all of this that's going on, we are just not in favor of it. We are believers in the homeownership pride, and that renters have their pride, as a resident stated so well. But there's just something about homeownership, and that this whole area is single family homes, and it was just a big deciding factor for us. We're both working professionals. We have adult children. Yet we love the young families that we see in this area. We love the school down North Pearl there, because I've had to go there to vote. We're very concerned. We have seen the cut through that happens here on Healy Terrace, and it has literally blown my mind. I've wanted to yell at cars. I now, since being home, usually we're gone during the day, but since being home, we just take notice of it. I can be in my backyard, which is on the Taunton South, 24 South on-ramp. I can hear somebody turn onto Healy Terrace, come around the curb, and then it straight and flat to just fly out to Lovett or any of the other side streets, or all the way out to Pleasant. And something needs to be done. Our concern, my husband and my concern, is definitely about the target audience, the population that they're looking to attract. I'm not that confident in what the developer is really saying. I mean, open options. Coming from Boston, I've seen it all. And it's just very concerning for us as new residents here in this area. And we have completely fallen in love with Healy Terrace and this neighborhood. And we have invested a lot into our small property here. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you very much, Josie. Attorney Resnick, you have no more on the Zoom call, correct?
Correct. I'm kind of just monitoring because someone wanted to unmute themselves and they can jump in.
And do you want to read into, from the group chat, read into the record?
Yep. Okay, into the record. John DeRocha, Carlin Road. Traffic claiming for the residential area is ubiquitous with causing access issues for the residents who live in the area. I am worried whatever traffic calming initiatives are implemented will not curtail an increase in traffic while causing an undue burden to residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Susan Papura, who I do have her address, she commented, can these be sublet? Josie Butler also already have her address. Comments, please provide clarification on last evening's comment about keeping 40B option open and tonight's comment that the property will not be affordable housing. John DeRocha again, if the overlay is approved and the current developer backs out for any unforeseen reason, It opens the door for any residential development on this property. While AA properties are the most desirable, there would be no guarantee that such a property would ultimately get built. John DeRocha again, did the traffic analysis include all the residential side streets? How was the analysis performed and when? Stephen Morris, he spoke earlier. He states this plan would double the population of people accessing the North Pearl Street Road and probably increase the vehicle traffic by 150% because market. Carrie Root-Regon, who spoke as well, states this space would be better suited to a quality senior care facility. This COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how important and vulnerable our aging seniors are, and providing upscale senior care should be a priority for our community. This doesn't state the name, but I believe this is Stephen Morris again, because it's the Galaxy S10 reference. States rate housing attracts professionals and all have their own vehicle. I don't oppose a development, but I would suggest the proper place for this would be opposite the Pearl Street entrance to Good Sam Hospital. I don't believe that 300 parking spaces will be near enough to accommodate this property. So where will they park? Stephen Morris, 16 Island Road. I love this quiet neighborhood. Please do not double the population as this will.
Has everybody had an opportunity to speak that wants to? Because then I have some questions myself, and I'm sure some of the councilors do, for Mr. May and Mr. Lambert.
Can you go on chat? Would that make us talk?
And
Oh, someone's trying
anyone-
to speak right now.
Okay,
Ray Creedon, you have yourself on mute. Are you trying to speak?
Yes,
Okay, we can hear you. You just state your name and your address.
yes, my name is Ray Creedon. I live at 120 Healy Terrace. I've been here for 40 years, and we have noticed changes over the years. But one of our biggest concerns, of course, is two concerns. One is the traffic, and the second is the valuation of our homes with the addition of 300 more cars in the area. I leave for work in the morning anywhere between 7:30 and 8:30, and I get down Healy Terrace and take a right towards Route 27. And numerous times, especially when school is in session, the backup on Pearl Street going north can be 15, 20 cars just through the traffic getting to the light at Route 27 for people to go through that or turn right onto 27 up to 24. The change in this by bringing 300 more cars to the area would be dramatic. And one thing that not many people have mentioned, if you're at the Braymore Nursing Home and you have 300 cars in that area, and if you're going to take a left on Pearl Street going north, that means you have to cross over 2 lanes of Pearl Street going south and then head north on Pearl. The traffic there would become a nightmare of anybody trying to cross over 2 lanes of Pearl and then head north. It would back up traffic, the congestion in that area, because remember, there's only one entrance and one exit out of that Braymore Nursing Home. There's not a light there. So everything that would be going left would have to wait for traffic coming down Pearl and try to cross over. That in itself is going to be a nightmare. And once people realize they can cut down Carlin Road and Healy Terrace and bypass this, we are going to have traffic all hours of the day in the early mornings and late afternoons. And we also have a lot of children in the area, young families. and they want to play out in the street, ride their bikes, walk their dogs, play with their friends, play basketball, and this would become another nightmare. So in essence, I think the project, there's no reason why we couldn't have a medical facility there or something on a smaller commercially zoned area that's been there to accommodate a facility that would help the area and not put in 197 apartments with 300 cars and 400 plus people. Thanks for your time and appreciate it.
Could I speak, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Creedon. And who's that?
Hi, this is Joan Creedon. I'm Ray Creedon's wife. I live at 120 Healy Terrace also. I've been a resident of this city since I was born. I was raised here. We bought our house over 40 years ago. That makes me 70 years old. I've seen Brockton go from good to bad, all in between. And I've noticed, as my husband said, this traffic problem, anytime there's construction or anything on Pearl Street or even in that area, people come down. Carlin Road and Healy Terrace intertwine at an intersection. So the two roads, because it's confusing on that map, the two roads abut each other at an intersection. So if you go from Pearl Street, you can go all the way down Healy and then go all the way through to Carlin to Pleasant Street. Once people realize that shortcut, they then take it all the time. It's going to be much worse for people just as ourselves trying to get in and out of this street to try to do our business and to have people using this as a cut through constantly, which they will. A place such as this, we've seen the area in Walpole, and it is down, it's well off the beaten path, as the expression goes. It is nowhere near a densely populated street with the problems and congestion that Pearl Street has. A building such as this should have an egress of 2 streets, not just the one, dumping all their problems onto an already overly congested street as Pearl Street. Because of the developments in the businesses along Pearl Street over the years, we never used to have a McDonald's, we never used to have a Burger King, we never used to have all of the other businesses that have gone in, say for instance, TJ Maxx and that whole shopping plaza. So all of this traffic now has been building up over the years and going down Pearl Street to access all of these different areas, plus the highway. So I really think that Brockton could find either a better place for this to go in. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we should change the zoning laws. When my husband and I want to sell our house, we are no longer going to have a quiet street for people to want to sell, to buy on, I should say, and to move here with their children. It will no longer be the quiet, area that it once was. So I think we need more time to look into this before we make a quick decision that to me just benefits these developers and not the residents of Brockton. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Creedon. I believe we've read all now. Anybody else, Attorney Resnick?
Yep, I've read all the comments. There's nothing on the YouTube page. There's no one else with their hand held. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and speak on the matter, you can do that. You just click the blue part where it says unmute. You just click there, or you could look down to the bottom left-hand side of your screen that says the mute. It looks like a little microphone, and you can press that and we can hear you on the matter. But
Okay, I'm going to declare that portion of the hearing closed. Mr. May first, I guess, and possibly Mr. Lambert. Well, first of all, councilors, any of the councilors on the commission, on the ordinance committee have questions?
No.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Mr. Thompson.
So it's been it's been referenced often by the community of a better purpose for this area. Talking about other commercial facilities that may be more appropriate. Mr. May, can you, what's the likelihood of any commercial facility developing this property?
Counselor, thank you for the question. Sorry. Right now, there is very little demand for commercial office space in the Route 24 corridor. What office you do see going in is being purpose-built for tenants. You see a lot of lease and sublease space that is sitting empty. As you know, this facility has been closed for over 2 years, and no one has really stepped up to the plate to try to develop it. Under its current zoning C5, there are no residential uses, whether it's townhomes or multifamily, that are allowed in this district. Retail is not even allowed in this district. So there's, as a C5 is very, so something is going to have to happen. And if you look around the city, there are other C5 districts that are sitting vacant, that are very difficult for us to fill because of the C5 zoning. And so we need to do something about that, but that's on another scale. Is there a demand, or could this be turned into a senior living complex? No, because it's a senior living, it's a residential development. Could it be a nursing home? Yes, it could, but nobody has come forward with a nursing home development proposal. So it's kind of bird in the hand situation with regards to uses. I know people will always want to see something different, at the site. I get that. I understand that. Unfortunately, the private market moves as it does to support uses that have opportunity. I don't think Woods would be investing $53 million in a new construction project if they didn't believe, if they didn't know that there was demand for these units at this price point and at this quality point. Would it be appropriate someplace else in the city? I think it would be appropriate in a lot of places in the city. I would love to see Woods join us downtown. This is their first toe dip into the Metro South pool, as it were. And they are taking advantage of being in a federal opportunity zone, and the ability to attract real estate development that brings is very good. Now, can we find other spots? Somebody had mentioned across from Good Sam. Well, that is city-owned land. It's part of the cemetery, and it's a wetland. So, we can all find other lots, but, are they for sale? Are they available? Are they usable? And for the most part, the answer is no, without coming downtown. And again, we welcome you down there. I'm sorry, to get back to your question. No, there's not a lot of demand for office space in Brockton.
Thank you for that, Mr. May. Secondly, looking at the, I know we've been talking about developments all throughout Brockton. And I think once you mentioned a statistic where potentially there's a high percentage of Brocktonians who would move into this development, and all developments throughout Brockton. From my understanding, Brockton has, a lot of poor quality housing, and being able to provide new, modern housing for Brocktonians is something in the interest of our city. So talk about, if this was built, what's the percentage that we believe of actual Brockton residents in poorer housing conditions would move into a facility like this?
Well, as you see in the city's demographics, and hopefully everybody has filled out your new census form for 2020, the Brockton population is either very, very young, small children, or starting to get gray like myself. We're empty nesters who may be looking for a more communal environment that is all on one level. Living, I don't have to run up and down the stairs anymore. So there is a demand for that empty nest experience as people are starting to sell their houses. And that's a good thing, because if you have two people in a 4-bedroom home, that's wasted real estate. It's wasted space. There's also another demographic that we need to secure in Brockton, and that is the young professional. We see so many of our high school graduates go on to college and never come back. A lot of that has to do with there's not the type of housing or community that supports them in their endeavors, and is still convenient to be able to get to their jobs either in Boston or around Route 20, I-93, or even in the job-rich area that is Milton and Canton. So Brockton is ideally situated on Route 24, midway between the city, between Boston and Fall River, and has an opportunity to really capture that demographic as it continues to grow, because we see Gen Z and the millennials continue to expand, and that population is dwindling in Brockton.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for your answers. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors?
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Counselor Rodrigues.
Mr. May, or even one of the developers, in terms of taxation, what are we looking, and perhaps it was said and I missed it when we were talking about this in the beginning, in terms of taxation, what are we looking at as far as taxes coming into the city of Brockton for the development of this piece of property?
Given the value of the construction and what we assume the assessed value is going to be, we think that we're going to see somewhere in excess of $540,000 in taxes a year.
And what are we getting exactly from that piece of property right now?
Zero.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, one of the, I too sense the concerns that my fellow taxpayers in this community have, but we also have to be, we have to realize that if there were some companies that were knocking down on our doors to ask to put some sort of a specific business in that location, I can understand that. I mean, it's the same thing that we went through with the fairgrounds when we were talking about a casino down in the fairgrounds where people wanted to put, I don't know, special, lunch sites for NASA, a variety of technology companies and all this other stuff, and not realizing that, first of all, we don't own the piece of the land that's actually being asked to develop. And two, we don't have a lot of those companies knocking down on our doors to do this. So my question, or what I would like to say to the residents, if you feel that you can help us as a city to help us develop certain pieces of property to make it more user friendly and also revenue producing to the city, that I think is what we need to start looking at, because the whole thing about, listen, I live on a very busy street off of Summer Street here that sometimes it takes me minutes to get onto Summer Street to go to work or do anything in the city, but that's the price that I have to pay sometimes by living in the city. So if our residents feel strongly about preventing a certain type of a business from coming into the city itself. They need to be proactive in helping us lure some of these more acceptable businesses into areas that they have serious, serious concern about. Because, I mean, honestly, I feel kind of torn between, two places here. I sense what the residents are saying. I feel what the residents are saying, but I'm also looking at, as a public official in the city that's looking at the budget in the city coming forward, where we have to lay off teachers, we have to cut programs all over the place because of the situation that we're facing with COVID-19 and some of the other unknowns that are coming down the pipeline. We just have to be aware that this situation happens and how, we're going to get into a situation where, some of these things might, we run out of choices in some instances, because I honestly don't want to lay off any school teacher, especially when we are actually going to put in all kinds of restrictions, all kinds of demand on the school professionals that we're dealing with. And every time we look into doing something business-wise in the community, we've gotten deservingly so pushback, but we don't have any other alternatives. That's what I'm actually want to leave here, is that if we have concrete alternatives, I will vote this thing down tonight. But I don't see how we actually have some concrete alternatives to this particular thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilor Rodrigues. Any other councilors? Mr. Mayor, if you could answer a couple of things that came up. There certainly seems to be some concern, and again, this may go to Mr. Lambert, I don't know, about the idea of no subsidized housing. How do we guarantee that? You and I have had this conversation. How do we guarantee that?
I would like to jump in first. I believe that we can enter into a redevelopment agreement with Wood Partners that stipulates that they would not seek federal funding, federal subsidies without getting too far in the weeds on that. I also think that an agreement like that, I've been speaking with Megan Bridges, Attorney Bridges, and she is confident that we can draft something that is acceptable to both sides to make sure that we're getting the high quality product that we want and we deserve in Brockton.
You say acceptable to both sides, but, and Mr. Lambert can answer this, I think, to tell the neighbors. I think I've been very clear right from the first day that we spoke. The two things that I talked about were no subsidized housing and no tax increment financing. You and your partners are aware of that, correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You were loud and clear with me about that from the beginning. You and I were in lockstep on one part of that and slightly off on the other, which I think is a conversation that I'm hearing from you ongoing and from others that we understand. I'd like to address the question about subsidized housing in two ways. One, look, our business model across the country is a high-end market rate housing. We certainly include affordable housing in a portion of our developments when it's required, as it is in many municipalities throughout the Commonwealth and throughout the country. When we don't need to, we are very happy to develop 100% market rate housing. In this case, that is absolutely our business model. As Rob mentioned, the investment that we're looking to make here in the city of Brockton is over $50 million. We don't take that lightly, and we certainly cannot get a return that's adequate for us, for our investors, or for our lenders if we are renting it to low-income housing. So, unequivocally, our approach here is 100% market rate. Now, in terms of guaranteeing that, we're willing to, I don't know the legalities of, what we can sign and what we can't sign. We're more than willing to work with the city to figure out what that proper document is, whether that's a redevelopment agreement or whatever it might be. we're happy to explore that, and we're going to be more than happy to sign the appropriate documents that that we're required to do so. That is not an issue. This is not a bait and switch. It's not our intention, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to prove that on paper or just by the product that we're planning to produce for the city.
Okay, one of the other issues that's come up in questions to me is about the effect on schools. 196 proposed units. Can you give me the breakdown on 1 and 2? And I believe there's only a few 3-bedroom, correct?
Yes, sir. So currently the proposal has 112 one-bedrooms. So certainly the vast majority of what we're proposing is 1-bedrooms, 77 2-bedrooms, and 7 3-bedrooms. And that's a unit mix, Mr. Chairman, that we're willing to talk about. Certainly, we think it is the appropriate mix. We certainly feel like we have to, at least to some small degree, provide, a different variety of housing types. We've seen in other projects, it doesn't go well when you only have one type, so you do have to spread it out. But as you can see, the vast majority of what we're proposing, well over 50%, is 1-bedrooms. And within that 1-bedroom range, there'll be smaller 1-bedrooms, more standard size 1-bedrooms, and then 1-bedrooms plus dens, which we are finding to be extremely popular, especially right now versus during this COVID-19 crisis where folks are working from home a lot more often.
And another question that came up, I know at planning last night, and you certainly can't hold to this, but we have had conversations. What do you see a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, and a 3-bedroom renting for? And again, I know these aren't quotes that you can write down right now, but we have had a talk about the difference between what market rate is, certainly not Boston rates, but what does your model show right now?
Sure. So the average that we're showing right now, and again, there's a long way to go. And if we were to develop this property, it would come online for several years and the market can change. We hope for the better. Right now, our pro forma shows an average rent of over $2,000 per unit. And that's just the aggregate average across the board.
Rob, do you know the average rent for apartments are getting in Brockton?
In downtown, we're starting to get up into the $1,800, $1,900 for 2 bedrooms, but those are in the brand new developments. The older housing stock is seeing a lower rental rate, but for the new development that's coming in, we're seeing a much higher rate. And to be frank, the quality that Woods builds is significantly head and shoulders above what we see somebody like a Trinity developing. Not that Trinity has a bad product, and I don't want to say that, because I could live there if I chose to. I would choose to live at Woods if I had a choice between the two. But I am a homeowner on Oak Street, and I know traffic.
Thank you. Councilors, any other questions? Mr. Burke, did you want to add something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add a couple of points because for clarification, there was a bunch of discussion and I saw some chat notes that talked about Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, which is in fact low-income housing, which is a specialized statute that requires communities to provide low-income housing on a certain percentage, which is roughly 10% of the community housing stock. This is not a 40B project. I don't know where that came from. Brockton will not have any more 40B projects because we far exceed the statutory minimum of affordable housing as required by the Department of Housing and Community Development. The only way you could possibly get a 40B in Brockton would be if a zoning board of appeals allowed them to proceed, even though they were in fact in excess of the statutory minimum. And I can't imagine that would happen. So this clearly is not a affordable housing project. As Mr. May indicated, they would be more than happy to rent enter into some sort of reasonable development agreement. Also, in terms of housing values, which is one of the things that I heard some of the neighbors concerned about, and I understand the concern. We're all homeowners and we have the same concern about our investments. If you took a look at the Walpole property, which many of the representatives of the city did, there is an extremely high-end residential unit, a residential subdivision right next to it. Now, this high-end development by Woods certainly didn't bring down the values of those homes that are in the $700,000, $800,000, and $900,000 range. It is really inconceivable to think or suggest that building one of the finest residential developments Brockton has ever seen will result in a diminishment of values in the surrounding neighborhood. I'd also like to suggest that we have our, one other point, and I know Jim Lambert's going to expound on it a little bit more, but I mean, there are some basic benefits besides the $500,000 of tax benefits that you'll see a year, and the recoupment of the $900,000 that Councilor Rodrigues suggested is out there and unpaid that's owed to the city of Brockton on this property. When a developer like Woods closed, then the city would finally get those funds back, but they currently are not paying anything in terms of taxes, and it's just accruing. But there are other benefits that I believe there'll be about 250 construction jobs that will be part of the development. There will be collateral benefits in terms of restaurants from the housing members, the retail market, the Westgate area. All of those will be increased and impacted for the benefit of the community by the investment of essentially high-end residents who will be spending in the community. Lastly, I think it's really important for this council, because you haven't heard it yet. We had a thorough discussion about the traffic, the reality of traffic. And I'm right there in North Pearl Street. I know what the traffic is, but we've had two professional engineers, Vanessa and Beta. And Beta is in fact the engineering firm for the city of Brockton that did a professional review of Vanessa's work. And basically they came to basically similar conclusions. And I think it's important that Vanessa provide an overview for the council to basically give the reality of what the parking impact would be on this specific community. And if it's okay with Jim Lambert, I think we ought to call on them to go ahead and provide an overview for the council.
Yeah, of course, Jim. Thank you. I mean, I'd like to just add quickly before we invite Jeff Dirk to speak. We've heard a lot of concerns about traffic, and we understand that. We are by no means ignoring that, and we are certainly taking that seriously. As Jim mentioned, we had a very well-regarded third-party traffic firm. Jeff Dirk, who's here tonight with us, is going to speak to this, do a traffic study, and they studied a whole bunch of areas, and they also followed up multiple times with some concerns and some questions from the neighborhood. And we're more than willing to look further into it if there's some streets that we haven't addressed. And as Jim mentioned, you know, the Beta Group, which is an engineering firm retained by the city, did a review of Vanessa's traffic report, and short of a handful of comments that were addressed, felt that the report was thoroughly done. We very much feel that the report was done accurately and thoroughly. Did it hit every single street that folks want to take a look at? No. Are we willing to expand that? Yes, absolutely. But I think absolutely we need to have an opportunity to speak to, you know, what was looked at in that process and answer any back and forth questions specifically that we can. So Jeff, if you're on still, if you want to just give us a walkthrough, please.
Actually, if you could hold off on that before we get to that.
Sure.
Councilor Ianieri had a couple of questions and we had him on mute. So Councilor Ianieri. Shannon, can you unmute him?
Yeah, let me find him. I'm trying to unmute you, Dennis, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I just hit unmute.
There you
Okay,
go.
there you go.
Counselor Ianieri.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to chime in on a couple of things. It's not so much questions as it is, I guess, situations that we all find ourselves in as ward councilors. And I've found, Council Chairman, as being a ward councilor, I've found myself in this position a couple of times, which is not the easiest thing that we have sometimes coming before us. But just to come up on some of the things that even our esteemed Councilor at Large Rodrigues had said as well. I follow suit with some of the things that he was mentioning, especially when he asked the questions about what type of tax revenue this would be. This type of project will be bringing to Brockton. I also, and I do want to hear the traffic report, because having been this road again before, is when we had and still do have situation on West Chestnut Street. All I hear about is traffic and what's the report saying, who did the report, and how the report get done, and we don't believe the report. No one likes to believe a report. So I do want to hear that particular report. And you and I both know I share, as well as you do, we share Pearl Street together. And it's not an easy street by no stretch. And I grew up in that area an awful lot. I'm up there. Sometimes it's the way I go to Westgate Mall and go do some errands up in that area. But I understand the flow of what the residents are saying, but I always bring myself back to trying to make the decision in what I think is still in the best interest of the city, especially when we're trying to bring development. And I think, this is a project that can and would be able to work. I think there's been a lot of work that's gone into it. And I credit you, Councilor Cruz, for, staying on top of it and doing what's in the best interest for, that area and for your ward, but as for the city of Brockton as well. And then I agree with Mr. May. Some of us old timers, we are getting tired of the big nest. My big nest is a little bit too big for me, and I'm looking for places like that, to be truthful with you. I mean, places that I could still be here in Brockton, but yet I could still be in a downsized situation, and still wanting to be a part of the city and all it gives. So I mean, I just want to mention that, because it does bother me at some point when we try to do these things that we get stopped by our constituents, and I know they're just as important. They make up the city, no doubt, and they've been here for a lot of years. But still, we have to make our decisions and take a hard look at what we're doing to what I see as a very, very desolate now, more so than ever, desolate piece of property up there. And I think it can work, and I think Mr. Lambert and his developers can make it work, so that it works for everybody. So that's just my comment. I mean, I'm going to support it tonight. I've gotten beat up before, but that's okay. I'm just think I'm doing what's in the best interest of the city of Brockton as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. If we want to get back to Mr. Dirk now, if you want to give us fairly brief, if you could. It's starting to get late for everybody.
Yeah, I understand.
It's school night, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, councilors, and I appreciate you taking the time tonight to listen to the project. And as you said, I'll be brief with respect to our traffic analysis or our transportation analysis that we had done for the project. So as you heard, the city had an independent review of the study done. The study, it's prepared in a professional manner. So I think that's probably the first thing is, the facts and figures and the numbers and the analyses and everything that we present. I think the important thing from the city's perspective is to have another independent review consultant on behalf of the city to check our findings to make sure, it was done in accordance with industry standards. It follows all the standard procedures. The sum and substance of the study really is that putting a residential use on this site in a residential neighborhood, I mean, the traffic volumes are in keeping with the type of traffic that's generated in this area. Residential uses do not generate significant volumes of traffic, especially multifamily developments. And it's fairly dispersed over the course of the day. I mean, it has peaks in the morning, peaks in the afternoon when people are coming home. this project itself is going to produce somewhere between 60 and 80 peak hour trips. And I think what Mr. May had shown to you in terms of how the traffic distributes itself, over half that traffic is going to the north. So I think as you look at 60 or 80 trips, as you get away from the site, the numbers get smaller and smaller. That does not discount anything that the neighbors or that the councilors have said with respect to congestion along North Pearl Street, the cut through traffic that happens on those neighborhood streets as well. You know, that's a fact, and we've documented it in the traffic study that these conditions do exist. But because of the fact that the traffic from this project is dispersed and that it spreads itself out onto the roadway, one of the things that we showed in the analysis was that the Pleasant Street intersection, it is congested, it has queuing that backs up to where the site is, but because not all our traffic is leaving at the same time, and a portion of it, most of it is going to the north, the traffic signal congested is able to process the additional traffic. So it's not to say that there's not congestion out there today, but what it's saying in terms of the analysis and confirmed by your review consultant is there is enough capacity with some improvements that this developer would make. And I think that's an important thing as well. And the council is talking about what those, what type of improvements might be able to be entered into a development agreement or whatever that happens to be. It certainly would be vetted through the planning board process as well. But we see improvements taking place at the Pleasant Street signal to accommodate the additional traffic, to reduce the queuing, to at least create a condition where this project won't harm what's happening out there today. And I think the second piece of it is the neighborhood traffic calming plan. So I think that's an important thing. And we talked about this with the planning board a little bit yesterday as well, is that these streets that these neighbors live on and all of the experience they'd have with people driving too fast because they are cut through traffic that doesn't have a destination on those streets there are tried and true methods that can be implemented to slow that traffic down. And in some instances to keep it back on Pleasant Street, to keep it back on North Pearl Street, things that the city council would approve in terms of turn restrictions or other things can actually be put in place. And that will be done as a part of this project in consultation with the neighbors and with the council to be able to implement that level of neighborhood traffic calming improvements. We've done this on many, many projects where we implement traffic calming measures that do and are very effective in reducing the speed of traffic and putting the traffic where you want it. Keep it on North Pearl Street, keep it on Pleasant Street. Those are the arterials, and not have it be going through the residential neighborhood. And that is something we can do as a part of this project. Absent redevelopment on the site, those type of things aren't going to happen unless the city goes and spends the money to be able to do that. This project can do that and do it very effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Dirk. I don't always have to unmute myself at city council chambers. I did have, I believe, one or two other questions, but just so the public knows, if this moves forward tonight, this is just vote one out of 3 votes that the city council will have to take on this. Mr. May, I did have another question that came up in somebody's Zoom group chat. If the zoning is changed to the overlay district and Woods Partners decides everything falls apart, do we have the ability to change it back? Does the overlay go with just this particular project? How does that work? In other words, we don't want to lose control of this.
You're right. We do not want to lose control over this. And I think we have the ability to, just as we have the ability to create a overlay with 3 readings, we have the ability to uncreate a overlay in 3 readings. So it is possible to do that.
So
I would defer to an attorney, whether it's Attorney Resnick or the city solicitor's office, as to see if there is a timed element of the zoning that it could be valid for only a year or 6 months. I'm just guessing at this point.
Attorney Resnick, can you look into that if this moves forward tonight, if we can add in an amendment that puts a time frame on this?
I will.
Or you know, a reverter or something like that, so that we know that if Woods Partners doesn't move forward, we can either automatically or whether we have to, because we don't want to leave this here and then find somebody coming along 2 years from now that isn't a partner that we want to deal with if we're going to move that way.
I'll look into that.
All right, thank you. Councilors, any other questions? Entertain a motion?
Councilor Cruz, before a motion, I just wanted to let you know that there were additional comments in the chat after the close of the hearing and additional requests for brief comment by some of the residents. It's up to the committee if they want to hear it because the
There's not too many,
hearing
right?
was closed. It's like 3 comments and I think only 2 people have asked for
Yeah,
30
go-
seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let me just start with the comments that have been read since Joe said, why does it have to be developed now? Carrie Ruitt-Reagan says Brockton needs to invest in its communities and convince the greater Boston area that we are worthy of their business. Until we put an effort into the quality of our neighborhoods and schools and downtown, we will only be an afterthought in Massachusetts. Downtown is where the apartment belongs. The MBTA and BAT are readily available there, making it better suited to renters. Let's do better. Andrade, resident of Brockton, I have her name and address. She asks, are there going to be income requirement for renters? Carrie comments again, what efforts is Brockton making as a city in order to attract businesses such as senior care, biotech, or any other startups? Why are rental apartments the only options here? Ray Creedon, I have his address. He states, I believe the state requires Section 8 vouchers, which possibly change the demographics if you cannot rent a fair market value. Susan Purpura, I have her address as well. Can these units be sublet? Stephen Morris, 60 to 80 peak hour trips in a 300 car, mostly upscale professional property is at best disingenuous. Ray Creedon, a medical facility was just built next to the entrance to Melrose Cemetery, so there are opportunity for other types of these facilities. And then I'm just going to unmute now the 2 that have requested to speak briefly, which is Paul, you're going to be unmuted right now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. First thing is a question. If the zoning overlay doesn't go through, aren't there other opportunities to do a different zoning overlay to the C5 and to make that zone or overlay that zone with single residential family houses, or something like a park or something else besides what it is designated at right now with the C5? Second thing is, I really take issue with the suggestion that it's the residents' responsibility to find out how to develop these properties. I don't think that's really our job. I don't think we have the expertise to do that. So I don't think that should be an alternative to the development of the property or to the opposition for this particular project. And lastly, with respect to the traffic, with all due respect to the professional engineers, I think they probably did their jobs. I don't understand all the details of the, and I know I'm going longer than 30 seconds, I apologize. I know they did their job with respect to what the legalities might have been and what the common analysis might be. I don't find anywhere in that report any mention of Healy Terrace. I don't find any mention of Carlin Road. I don't think there's any analysis of what happens, not with just the project people coming out of their project and into North Pearl, but with people avoiding that area because it's more congested and having more traffic on Healy and Carlin in both directions. So that's I think is the flaw in the traffic impact assessment. And I think all of those side streets, especially Carlin and Healy, need to be considered in the assessment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then I just one
Right.
more to unmute. This person doesn't have a name, but it's an iPhone phone number. 509-397-9819. I have given you access to unmute yourself. Your hand is raised if you want to speak. I guess a second call, last call for iPhone 509-397-9819 to unmute. I've given you the opportunity to speak. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And no matter what happens, I have been speaking with the mayor. We need to find a way to keep traffic out of there altogether other than the neighbors. Which has been a problem with the traffic commission in the past, but I think we have a more understanding traffic commission than we had years ago, and we tried to do some residential only, and we may even want to look at getting all the neighbors together and look at some one-way options, which make it unattractive to drive through, but that's a fairly major step that we need to have almost all the neighbors on board for, because it does impact, and somebody had mentioned this, that does impact your own self also, so. Okay, the hearings are closed. Councilors, no other questions, correct? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the overlay district and recommend to the full city council. Councilor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilor Ianieri, we'll come back to Councilor Ianieri, he must be muted. Councilor Rodrigues,
Yes.
Councilor Monahan,
I think Councilor Monahan may have fallen off the meeting, but Councilor Ianieri is unmuted.
Councilor Ianieri,
Yes.
and I am going to vote yes pending these other issues that we can look at the traffic before the final vote. So the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance, and everybody's concerns are taken, and we will try to get them taken care of before this moves forward.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. We have one last issue that also calls for a public hearing. Item number 7, ordinance, be it ordained pursuant to section 27.5 of the city ordinances zoning map, whereby reference is made to an incorporation of said boundaries of each of the zones established as shown on the map entitled the City of Brockton, Massachusetts zoning district map dated November 10, 1967, and thereafter amended, that the said map be amended to reflect zoning changes from C2/R2 currently to C2 relative to Quincy Street and Center Street. Invited to attend, Robert F. Sullivan, Councilor Thompson, Fireless, and Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development. Mr. Thompson, did you want, if you could explain this, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a matter that arose while I was a member of the Brockton Zoning Board of Appeals. At that time, I learned that the current zoning map in that area has the residential zone running about 150 to 200 feet into the commercial zone. This became an issue regarding the Webster Bank at the corner of Center Street and Crescent Street, where a proposed marijuana shop will be situated. Basically, due to the current zoning map, it's causing the owner of that property to not be able to have full use of their property. What it's going to require is that a fence that would be about 10 feet behind the building itself be erected and go across their property line. What that's going to do is basically create a good 50 to 60 feet of property that is fenced off from the rest of the property, and with the potential of that area of the property falling into disrepair and, you know, it being, you know, neglected. And so this property owner would like full use of his property. The zoning map change just basically allows C2 to go to the property line, which everybody expected it would already be. So this is just a correction, and I ask that the council votes favorably on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. May, any comments on this?
Yes, sir. While the bank in question, or the former bank in question, is what triggered this issue, there are several pieces of real estate up and down the corridor, which are included in this map amendment, that are split zoned. While they have commercial in the front, they're zoned residential in the back, which precludes them from using it for things like parking or outbuildings, even though they are completely surrounded by other commercial uses. It's rather odd that it was zoned this way. So I think that this will clear up that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open the public hearing, any other councilors have a question? I'd open the public hearing now. Anybody have any comments in favor? Attorney Resnick, I'll let you look at the YouTube page and the.
Nothing on the YouTube page and nothing from the comments. And there does not seem to be anyone new or raising their hand to speak on the matter.
Yeah, I don't believe this was going to be. I don't believe this was going to be anybody coming on this. So I'll declare that portion of the hearing closed. Is there anybody here in opposition to this? Want to speak in opposition to this zoning change?
Same comment, no additional comments in the Zoom chat and nothing on YouTube.
In that case, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve favorably.
Second.
Motion made and properly seconded. Councilor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilor Rodrigues?
Yes.
Councilor Ianieri?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion carries favorably. Recommended to full city council for ordinance change. And I believe that is it, correct?
Correct.
I meant to mention when everybody was still on, I want to thank Attorney Resnick in particular. This is no way to run an airline, as they say, but we can't, none of us wanted COVID. We didn't ask for it. It's here. We have to do what we have to do. It's, I understand the frustration of a lot of the neighbors because we weren't able to have a meeting and go through this issue. It seems like it's quickly thrown on them when it hasn't been, but thank you, Shannon, for your work on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here. And I was remiss in not letting the public know that Councilor Mendez has been with us silently since the beginning, and I should have made sure all the people that were on the knew that she was on. There were so many names in front of me, I never saw your name, Rita, so I apologize. Any questions, Mr. Mayor? Thank you for staying the whole night, and we will have to see how this goes. Rob, we've got to keep these feet to the fire and make sure that the next step is that we have cast in stone lead pipe guarantees, written guarantees that on what's been promised to us from Woods Partners. So, and if it can't be guaranteed, we don't move forward. Mr. Mayor, you agree with that?
That is, yes, sir, I do.
All right, any other questions?
Not at all.
Okay, the only bad part of a meeting going this late is we can't go to the card now.
Oh, it's all right.
All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Do you need anything, Shannon, before we go?
Nope, just the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much. Enjoy your drive home, everybody. Shannon, I think you're the only one with really a drive home. Everybody else
That's
is home.
okay.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.